When you look at education today, do you think we can actually re-educate the entire, let's even just say the US, using the technology we have?
100%.
What about for people who are really scared to have AI teach their kid?
You should be terrified. They are being brainwashed by TikTok today. AI could be good or bad, and we need to have a huge effort to make sure that we use it for good.
Founder of Trilogy Software and ESW Capital.
Joe is now the principal of Alpha School.
Today we're here with Joe Liemandt.
I saw a tweet from you. 3 girls in my Alpha High group were described by their parents as not math science girls. They've been focused on other pursuits, but their math SAT scores, 790, 790, 790.
People read that and say that's crazy. In our school, that's normal. If we spend 10 years and educate kids the way we've been educating for 100 years, those kids are going to go into an AI world and have no skills that matter. AI gives these kids superpowers.
You all believe if we educate kids like this, they will be more successful, and thus we will have all these beneficial repercussions. What does the data say?
We are the best performing academic school in the country. Every single class we have is top 1%. No school can say that. Here's why, though. Here's what you should actually do if you're a parent.
So you've been described in so many news articles as private, reclusive, mysterious, and a billionaire. But now you're back in the spotlight, in this room, on camera. Why?
I believe 2 things. I guess I was big in the 90s. And then in 2005, I got married and shut everything down. My last podcast, sort of prior to this, was in 2005. And so I was quiet for 20 years. My youngest is now a senior in high school, and she's going to be leaving. And so my next 20 years is all about transforming education, and I think we can transform it for 1 billion kids. And to do that, I have to get out there and explain why it can be awesome for kids around the world. Like the co-founder of Alpha, McKinsey, she says, this is the best time in history to be a 5-year-old. Mm-hmm. And we totally believe that. And we need to go out and build that and make that happen.
Was there just no point to being public beforehand? Like too much hate on the internet, not fun? You just like working with computers?
Well, 2, and I'm definitely naturally an introvert. And if I have a choice of just sitting inside, I definitely would do that. The other was just for family. I didn't want my family to grow up in that environment. And I wanted to make it as normal as I could for my kids. It's not quite normal, but not being in the press all the time makes it a lot easier. The other thing I got that happened in 2005, I got Forbes to take me off the list. So I was on the list in all the 90s, the rich list, and I got them to take me off.
How?
And so, well, there was a dot-com turn down, and so they were all like, oh, and if I don't give them data, right, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, you must have lost all your money. I'm like, yeah, totally. And so then they found out later and put me back on it. And I had to sit down with my 2 daughters, and I'm like, kids, I hate to tell you this, but I've been lying to you. We actually have more money than we think, and it's gonna go out next week, and you're gonna see that we have more money, because I had basically been trying to have them grow up in a world where it wasn't surrounded by, billionaire kind of stuff.
Yeah, smart. I was just with another friend of mine, Jenny, who is also, a Billy. But she was saying last night, she was like, we purposefully never put out how much we were worth, which I think for young people, they're like, why not? Where are the Raris? Where's the planes? But I think that's also often an indicator of perhaps not everything's very great if you're having to demonstrate that as your indication of wealth. So do you think for young people, or if somebody's listening to this, should you try to look poor? Is it a negative signal to actually focus on projecting wealth?
When I look at kids' motivation, and students' motivation, right? All our schools are about what motivates students, and parents, like it or not, what motivates kids? Kids want to be influencers. They want to be famous, right? They want to be athletes. They want to be star athletes, right? They also want to be rich. Right? Those are all dimensions that drive kids' motivation. And, you have one where when you get wealth, you're often like, oh, honey, or, son, that's not really that good. And it's hard, right, for the kid to be like, no, I want to go prove myself. I want to go do this. And so I believe it's just an intrinsic motivation in a lot of kids, and that you need to teach them the right way, right? There's all these great character building and life skills you can teach under that to get the habits you're looking for, right? In our schools, we start teaching about money in kindergarten. right? And so we have a whole financial literacy program that starts in kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade to teach all the good habits that people need to have.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good you're talking about it again, because what I found is once people get money, then to your point, they're like, oh, well, that's not important for us to talk about anymore because it seems gauche. And so then, but then how are you supposed to get it if all the people who have it will never tell you the real path to it?
Correct.
And so I think it's actually pretty liberating now that some people on the internet are saying, hey, okay, this is what it took. This is what it looks like if you have this much. It's hard to even conceptualize some of it. And so I think it's good.
Yeah, no, I think teaching how to make money and capitalism, I believe there's a view of, if you're in the TikTok world, right, there is a view that socialism is much better than capitalism. And we don't teach why capitalism is good, and it's a force of good, right? And it can be very productive. It can be bad, but you can also teach kids this is how it can be additive to society. And that's not out there, and I believe it should be for sure.
What do you think are some of the ways you can teach kids, or how do you teach kids about money or to get money?
We want to teach kids how to earn money, right? How to save money, how to spend money effectively, how to invest, and how to donate, right? And it's all of those things. And for kids, right, it needs to be real money. It's why kids often got allowances and things like this, which is you're having to teach them how to be responsible about it. That yes, you have to earn this. And when it's your money, you're going to spend it differently than if it's not your money, right? And you are going to learn how to invest. So like in our middle school, for when they earn money, they can run and, basically Robin Hood for kids, right? They can invest. And, there's just so many great lessons. One of the things we allow the kids to do after they've earned it, they can invest in anything they want. And some seventh graders YOLO that money on some crazy thing and lose it all, right? And their parents are like, wait, what's going on? Why'd you let them lose it? And the answer is the best time to have that happen to you is when you're in seventh grade, not when you're 27, right? Or if you're going to have debt and a credit card, right? The time to learn it, we let the kids borrow, around it, and then they have to pay it back with interest. And our kids know what 25% credit card debt is, when they're in fifth grade, because they're having to earn back, whatever they borrowed to buy. And so all these life skills that you want to teach are totally teachable and actually need to be taught. Right? If you ask most parents, you're like, what are the life skills I really want my kid to know? Financial literacy, entrepreneurship, right? They want that as a course. And in standard school, historically, you haven't been able to. Sort of in our new model, you can absolutely spend plenty of time teaching kids these skills. That's
so smart. Yeah. I mean, we always say the best business school is being in business.
Yeah.
Like I find business school to be kind of a funny misnomer. Yeah. I think it's maybe okay for the network, but actually I think a better network would probably be building things with other builders?
100. I couldn't agree more.
What do you think? Should people go to MBAs?
No. That's an easy one for me. Is no. It is a great 2-year period to build up a set of great relationships. But no, there's nothing on the business knowledge that you're going to come out of there that is a fraction of what you would get from building your own thing for that 2 years. Like just not even close.
And putting the $100K on the line for a startup instead of just getting debt that you can't ever escape.
Correct.
For business school.
No, it's just, and back to the skills. These skills are all of how to start a business. You have to do it. So in our high school, we have a set of students who want to create a new curriculum for next year. And the curriculum they want to start is how to make $1 million in high school, right? And they want to because all our afternoons they get to work on their passion project for 4 years. They're like, we can totally teach kids, right? How to be able to, what are the skills to build a business starting in high school, right? And that is really effective. And it's not going to be a traditional MBA curriculum.
Now, people have said lots of things about Alpha School and, hey, billionaires are teaching our kids. And how can we do this with AI? And it's completely free form. And oh my God, you give them debit cards. But then if you pause for a second and you think about what school is like for us, at least I'll say for me, really hard wooden chairs with tiny little desks that you have to sit in for 8 hours a day, where you have to ask to use bodily functions and be taught from somebody that's never actually done the thing that they're teaching you about. It's wild. And so, if we were taught, you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get a good job, then you make money, and that's how you get rich and happy. What do you think the real process is?
Well, I think I think the way to think about it, or the way we think about it is, if you focus on K through 12, it's been 100 years. We educate everybody on the planet the same way, right? It's put them in a classroom 6 hours a day, teacher in front of the classroom. And that was actually 100 years ago the best way to educate the population, right? And it is the most equal thing on earth. You can be in the poorest school district in any country in the world. There's a teacher in front of a classroom. The building's not very nice. Or you can go to a really expensive private school and there's a teacher in front of the classroom in a nice building. But it's the same mechanism. And, sort of where alpha came from was, if you stepped back and said, okay, AI is coming, the world's going to be different in 10 years, and you have a kindergartner, and you're like, am I preparing them, for a dozen years from now, right? What would that be? And you rethought this from the ground up. How would it be different? And so that's what we did, is we just sat there, and the first thing, back to the experience, the first thing that we said was, if you're going to send kids in this for a decade plus, they must love school, right? That is just a design goal, right? I'm a product guy, right? And so I just look at this as a product manager, where I'm like, how would you design a product? And so the first thing you'd say is, they should love school. And we literally measure it we ask kids every 8 weeks, do you love school?
We have like an NPS score.
Absolutely. 90+%, 96% in the last one said they love school. We actually had to ask a new question because it got so high, it was sort of useless to ask that, is we say, do you love school more than vacation, right? And 40 to 60% of our kids, each 8 weeks, depends on the workshops and whether they're really cool or what their vacation choice is, but we sit and we want to strive to build an environment that if we're going to send your kid there for a decade plus, like, they should love it more than vacation, right? My highlight, I've been principal for 3 years, was a few months ago in the spring, 2/3 of the high school students sent me a note and said, can we keep the school open this summer? We don't want summer break.
What?
Right? And I did not like school. And what I went through was not that. I got in trouble for skipping school all the time in high school.
Yeah, you dropped out of Stanford
and
too.
I dropped out of college for the same reason. And, but that is crazy. But that is what our design goal should be, right? If you're going to rebuild school and your kids, right, it should be that. And
but
so
don't people even push back on that, on you on that? Like, I know my parents were like, you're not supposed to like it. You're supposed to go. You're supposed to listen. It teaches you discipline. So do you get pushback? Like, should we actually love school?
So I didn't start Alpha. It started a decade ago plus, and Brian and Mackenzie started it. And there's a long story on getting my own kids in it. But when I sat down with Brian, when my kids went in a decade ago, I said, what are the things I don't know as a parent that I'm wrong about? About education. And he's like, the first thing is kids must love school. And I was like, it's spinach.
Yeah.
It's spinach. And he's like, you are so wrong, Joe. And you will figure that out. And I can now tell you, now that I'm principal, if you want to build a great school, they do have to love it. And if you ask back to learning grit and hard work, one of the life skills we learn is grit and hard work, right? And our kids, all our 8th graders 3 weeks ago finished a Tough Mudder, right?
Wow.
And crossed the finish line at the same time. It was a teamwork grit combo life skill workshop, right? And so kids will do hard things, right? But you want to do it in a framework where they love it.
Yeah. And hard doesn't always mean monotonous either.
No, those are two totally different things. They're exactly the opposite. If you want a kid to love school, it can't be monotonous. It is literally the opposite. And so that design goal of, you have to learn, you have to build a school that kids love. That is what unlocks kids' potential, right? Is they're doing it because they love it. The kids don't come in the summer because they're working on some monotonous. It's that they believe they're changing the world, right? The reason that team who's working on it is they're working on a project where they're building an app, and their goal is to teach 100 million teens the key to their happiness is contributing to their community, right? And they're building that app, and they're like, we are going to change the world with this app. It's going to be the greatest. They have all these influencers who are helping them.
Mine was
on
like,
this.
Get an A- and no more, because what would be the point of that?
Right. And so this whole point, right, of exactly, I was the same way of, what's the minimum academics I could do to still get through the system?
Yeah.
This is, you want to engage kids on their passion, right? Starting in middle school, we start passion projects.
Well, let's back up though, because I think people could listen to that and they might think, Well, that sounds really nice. And they won't know your background and that you're incredibly data driven and the success that you guys have had. So like, it's not just you're like, that sounds good. I'm Joe. I'm a touchy-feely hippie guy. That's not you. You're the opposite of that. In fact, like many times I think people had said, or you had said, I would be the last person to be building this kind of company. So like, what does the data say? You have a particular way we're going to talk about on this podcast that you all believe if we educate kids like this, they will be more successful, and thus we will have all these beneficial repercussions. But your success has been pretty wild. So tell us like why we should listen to you on this.
First of all, we use on the academic side, there's multiple parts, but one element is, are they actually learning academics in our schools? And we are the best performing academic school in the country. On every single class we have is top 1%. And so in every grade, every subject. No school can say that. And here's why, though. Here's what you should actually do if you're a parent. We have known for 40 years that kids could learn 2, 5, 10 times faster. There's a whole field called learning science that has been studied for decades. Papers came out when I was in high school, right, about how we could radically transform education and allow kids to learn 10 times faster. But they all started with, this will not work with the standard teacher in front of a classroom model. And so there was no way to solve it, right? Because economically, you couldn't give everybody an individualized tutor. You couldn't go mastery. You couldn't implement some of these learning science concepts. And, one of the things that has changed, right? And our second, when we talk about if we're going to redo education for the next decade, our second principle is kids need to learn 10 times faster. Right? We need to allow them to learn 10 times faster because sitting in class for 6 hours a day and homework is not going to prepare them for the world that's coming. And so that was part of why I got involved 3 years ago was I had to go build a learning engine that teaches kids 10 times faster. And, all these learning science papers, every parent can go read them and understand it's possible. We took AI, Gen AI, combined with learning science to build this engine. So if you come to our schools, you sit down at this learning science-based AI tutor that's not like ChatGPT. It's different, that you'll have to experience it to understand it. But it's going to teach the kids 10 times faster. So in 2 hours a day, they sit down for 2 hours, they learn more than twice as much as if they sat in class. And so they're learning so fast, it doesn't matter where they come in. They can come in, top 25%, bottom 25%. They are going to get to top 1% the longer they're in the system, right? Because they just keep learning twice as fast as anybody else and doing it in only 2 hours a day. On the academic side, kids can crush it. Like if I could wave a magic wand to fix things, if parents could understand a couple things. One, your kid should love school. You can't say you should have a crappy 12 years. No employer would say, come work for me.
And hate it.
And it's going to suck for 12 years. Like when we talk about love of school, it's just so obvious in every other part of our life. We would be like, that's ridiculous. And yet, what employer, like, it's going to be terrible. But that same parent who's running a company with, thousands of employees, when they look at kids, they're like, yeah, you should toil a decade. It's terrible. You should hate it, right? It's good for you. And that's why all these kids are unhappy, right? And that's why they're not engaged. And that's why middle school and all these mental health issues. It's because we've designed a system that bores the crap out of them. We hope they hate it. And then we're like, let's put stress on them. And you do all that stuff. And you're like, God, that doesn't work out that well, right? I mean, it really is insane, like the system that we've designed. And so going back, you're like, yes, you should love it. So parents need to understand that. That's critical. And who at the end of the day wants to look at their kid and be like, I want you to hate this. The second is, though, you can crush your academics in 2 hours a day. That's it. That's all you need. So all of us who went through, because all we know, 6 hours a day at homework, you want to do better, you have to, all this crazy amount of time. That's not required. 2 hours a day, you'll crush it.
And how many students have you taken through this? So over the last 3 years, you have a lot of data to back this idea.
No, so we publish our data, so you can go to the website and it'll download, right? We are huge believers in standardized testing. And lots of parents don't like standardized testing. Yep. When they come to Alpha, they actually love it because they don't believe me that the kids are learning in 2 hours. And so all these parents who are like, no, I don't like standardized testing. I'm like, great, just trust me. Don't worry, they're learning. They're like, no, okay, wait. and then until they get the standardized test back that shows their kids crushing it, they are very skeptical.
Yeah, I saw a tweet from you on it. And the tweet was, 3 girls in my Alpha High group were described by their parents as not math science girls. This happened to me too. They've been focused on other pursuits, launching a Broadway musical, competing for Miss Teen USA, building millions of TikTok followers, and became nationally recognized as a teen dating expert. But their math SAT scores, 790, 790, 790, which is wild.
People read that and say that's crazy. In our school, that's normal, which is, there's a meme in the world, and in our middle school, a lot of girls come in and they're like, I'm not math science. It's a TikTok meme out there. And so they all say it. And one of the exercises we make them do is we're like, oh, really? Well, go find the learning science paper that's been written, because there's 10,000 of them written, that shows that middle school girls can't learn math science, right? And there's obviously none. They all can. And so that's where you get into the motivational part. Mm-hmm. A lot of what you're trying to do with kids, right, when you're raising them, is what are the limits they have in their head, right? What do they think they can't do? And how do I break through those, right? And that is the part, because that is what our guides do, right? We have guides and coaches whose entire job is to sit there and say, instill a growth mindset. Kids, you can do anything. And how do I motivate you to put in the effort to show yourself to do it, right? And so if you want the most controversial thing we do about paying kids and all these kind of things, so we will take any middle schooler, girls or boys, and we will pay them $1,000 if they get to top 1%. Because lots of kids come in and say, I'm not top 1%, right? I can't do that. Only GT kids can do that. Everybody else, I couldn't be a 790 SAT. And we're like, well, $1,000. And we show them, because of how these AI tutor works, it's not about IQ, it's literally about effort.
Wow. And
we show them if with this tutor put it in the right way in the system, they all can do it. And it literally will calculate for them. It's this many hours of time for you to get to top 1%. And they're just like, okay, well, that's many hours. Okay, I'm willing to put in the work. And then when they hit 1%, it changes how they see themselves, right? A lot of what you're trying to do when you're breaking through these blocks is they're like, I'm this kind of person. I'm not a math science girl. And you're like, no, that's just not a true statement. And then when they get top 1% in science, they're like, oh, I guess I am. And then once kids, you have to pay the 1,000 once to sort of get the breakthrough. But once they hit it, none of those girls needed any incentive to stay. That's actually not true. There's one of them needed some more incentive to get to 790, and we'll talk about that. But they didn't need any incentive to get to 790, right? Because they saw themselves as, oh, I am a top 1% math science girl now, even though I'm still trying out for Miss Teen USA and all of those. The Broadway musical is another one, because we can talk about that. Another controversial part is, for her, she is trying to first all-teen produced Broadway musical, right? She sourced all the singers off TikTok, right? They had 1 million streams like the first weekend. She needed to go to New York to meet a producer, right? I think she's run 3 or 4 shows off Broadway already, but she needed to get to that producer meeting. And I was like, well, and she wasn't at 790 math. And I was like, you can totally do it. And there was an incentive, and it would pay for her to fly up to New York to meet the producer. And she's like, okay, I'll go do that work, right? And then fly up and get it done. And so we will, back to earning. You're like, maybe you didn't want to do it and it was a little extra work to get to that 790, but you earned money that then you could spend on your passion project, right? That you could do. And when parents hear that story, okay, do you want to have a framework, right, to earn and save and spend? If your kid's earning money on some of the academics, that's breaking through some of, their inherent limitations, and it's being spent on learning how to invest or investing in their business or passion project they're doing. Generally, parents are like, okay, that's really a great idea. Like, I heard the headline of Alpha and I was like, this is stupid and I don't like it. And then sort of when they dive down, they're like, okay, wow, that's great. I wish my kid would go through that.
Yeah, well, I think the headline's actually pretty fantastic. It's like where students learn 2x in 2 hours, test in the 99th percentile, and then give students the rest of their childhood back. That is good. You got that's a good marketing slogan. And the best part is always when your slogans are true.
Buying a business or launching your own venture can feel impossible if you're stuck figuring out the website, logo, email marketing all at once. But here's the good news. GoDaddy Aero is here to help. So just a few prompts, it builds a professional website, a logo, an email, even social content, all tailored to your business. It's like having a whole launch team in your laptop. Instead of months of grinding, you can go from idea to launch-ready business in minutes. No more waiting, no more guessing, just a real online presence that you can grow with day one. Suddenly, the thing that was just a tiny idea in a notebook is online, polished, and ready to scale. So if you're ready to take your idea to life, head to godaddy.com/Codie Sanchez and try GoDaddy Aero today.
What about for like the rest of us? So people who are listening who don't have kids, who would have loved to go through this, but maybe feel like they've hit their levels. They can't get further. This sounds great for these malleable brains, but for them, it's not possible. Are they just out of luck? Like, can you learn how to change your brain and become a top 1%er past high school?
Yes, you can. It's not the market we're focused on, but all these learning science concepts, there are some elements at age, but fundamentally, you can apply them for your entire life. And, K through 12 and take higher ed. If you take higher ed and down, the education market is a global $7 trillion market. And so we're focused on the K through 12 for now. But there's a huge opportunity in education to take all these same concepts for adults. Right?
What's the TAM of the larger side?
I mean, near infinite in this world. Here's the issue you have right? When you look at the world today, right? AI is going to change everything. There's going to be massive reskilling that needs to occur, right? And we're focused on, okay, how do we prepare the world for from kindergarten up, right? And then, but there's a whole nother set of, okay, all these jobs are going to be obsoleted, right? And how are we going to retrain all those adults? And I believe that's a huge market and that somebody needs to go in there. And I believe entrepreneurs need to go in. We can't just count on the old educational system that we all have been doing for 100 years. We need new entrepreneurs to go in and take these concepts and say, how are we going to reskill all the people who need it?
You're on obviously the very cutting edge of AI, and you have been forever. From, I don't know if you would have called, some of what you were doing back at Trilogy and ESW. Did you call it? Did you say you were AI focused?
Well, it technically was AI. So my AI world was in high school. I wrote a paper on AI, and one of the segments back then, this is in the 80s. What year was it? Yeah. This is in the 80s. So this would have been like 1985. Was neural nets was a new area, and I was like, they're decades away. Yeah. Back then, what AI was like expert systems and ontologies. And so I went to Stanford, and I was literally in class with Professor Feigenbaum, who's the father of expert systems, which was AI. Now, the problem was AI was in its downturn phase. It had boomed sort of early 80s. There was a bunch of failed AI companies, so you could never call it AI. So when we started our company, when I dropped out of Stanford and started the company, we didn't call it AI at all because of the negative connotations, but it was the first AI product to sell $1 billion. And so that was sort of our claim to fame in the 90s of what built Trilogy, the software company, was AI. We just didn't call it that because we didn't want the connotations.
That's fascinating. And now obviously the company's huge and you've bought all these companies and you're sort of a behemoth in tech. But God, I was reading some old stories on you, and I'm sure sometimes it's even hard to like reimagine, but I loved this one line about how like by the fall of 1991, you guys are like, at this point, I think still in your garage, sort of like a couple five guys, no money, and you'd been 3 months away from product for 2 years. And, you did the thing of working 20-hour days and sleeping under your desks. But the part that's interesting is how people were talking about how your former classmates, they were going to work for Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and how some of the other friends of yours began kind of telling you, like, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? Like, you're a smart guy. You dropped out of Stanford. You're going to build this thing. You've been 3 months away for 2 years. This is going to fail. Stop being even maybe what your dad said to you when you graduated Stanford. Was that Gregory was your dad?
It was my dad when I dropped out. I didn't graduate, so yes.
Yeah. And did he call you a moron for dropping out of Stanford?
It was a big title in a magazine, like Forbes, I think. They're like, the title was "You're a moron" because that was his quote.
Does that still feel weird, or does it not register for you anymore?
Well, no, but back to that is, I believe, and we were talking about the MBAs before. Here's my difference of an MBA and an entrepreneur. right? Entrepreneurs believe they're going to change the world no matter what everybody else thinks, right? That they just sit there. And I remember back to one of the, we were building this engine, this, configuration engine, and we're in it and we were just like, we're totally going to do it. And of course we know how to do it and we'll get there. It just needs some more time every 3 months, right? We kept doing that. And I remember the parent of one of the founders, right, of the co-founders, is just like, and he had dropped out. And so the parents like mad at me because the kid's dropping out and doing this futile task. And it was all dumb and stupid. And my dad's calling me a moron, all those kind of things. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Bell Labs had 100 PhDs working on this and they failed, right? I mean, isn't that awesome? And to me, I was like, because we're going to solve it. And nobody else has been able to figure this out.
This is not awesome.
And literally, they're like, that literally is an example that convinces me you're never going to succeed, right? And it's that blind belief that you are right? And that is what entrepreneurs do. Back to the MBA, I used to give talks at Harvard Business School and stuff back in the 90s. And I would just sit there, I say, here's your problem as an MBA. You're going to look at the spreadsheet and you're going to say that cell doesn't work. So the spreadsheet doesn't foot, right? It doesn't work. So I'm not going to do this idea, right? Because you're just looking at it and analyzing it. I'm like, an entrepreneur looks at that cell and says, I will change that cell. I will make that work, right? And that's sort of the difference between the two. If you're going to be a builder and an entrepreneur, you're going to go change reality. Like when we started back, 3 years ago when I became principal, I'm like, I have to build an engine that teaches kids 10 times faster, right? And I'm like, no, we got the learning science, this Gen AI, it's totally going to be doable, right? And yes, you can do that. But if you analyzed it, it wasn't obvious. I think today people still don't really believe it. But that is what you do. You go out there and you say, I'm going to go build a school that people love, that, all those crazy things that you read about, entrepreneurs go make that a reality. And that's what's awesome. And I believe just, are they made or formed? We believe in our high school that you can teach kids this skill. And if they're following their passion, they all have ideas where they think they can, put a dent in the universe. And we just need to help them do that and give them the skills to do that.
Why do you think your brain worked that way? Why was your neural network wired to the fact that you looked at something almost impossible and thought, yeah, we're going to do that?
I think humans naturally are like that. And I believe the standard school system sort of beats that out of them. If you talk, so starting in middle school, a lot of people come into our schools, right? We had a few hundred people join. We have schools now all over the country and they joined, in the last 10 weeks ago when school started, and they come into middle school and they're consumers, what we call consumers, right? They scroll TikTok, they play Fortnite all day, right? They've been caught in that dopamine, evil screen time hook. And we run everybody through an exercise where we say, what are your values, right? Go do a values exercise. Do a Japanese ikigai, if you know what those are.
Sure.
What do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need, right? What do you get paid for? And do a vision board, if you think as a way to think about it. These kids' vision board is not, I want to scroll TikTok all day or be a consumer. Mm-hmm. They want to go change the world. They believe they can, right? They want to. They just don't have the skills. And then after they create all this vision board of who they want to be, it's always awesome. Kids want to be awesome. They want to do great things. And then we make them do a 168-hour project where they track every hour of the week. And you are what you do. And that's when they have this realization, this middle school girl comes up and she's like, I guess I'm going to be the world's best TikTok scroller. Right. But the disappointment in her voice when she was like, I just did my vision board of who I want to be. And I realize, right, I've been caught in this consumer mindset and I'm trapped. And that is what our job in middle and high school is, to teach kids the skills to go be a builder, to go be a creator, because they all want to do that. It's not that this generation, right, it's like, oh, there's no ambition. They don't want to. They want to. Our school system just doesn't give them the skills to make that transition.
So have you found that you can take your brain back from being hijacked by this attention economy we're in?
100%. So another example, this was probably a month ago, where a student came up to me where this was one of somebody who worked super hard. This is the other part about hard work. 10 weeks, he came up to me, he's like, 10 weeks ago, if you had said sign a contract. I'll pay you $100 an hour for the rest of your life, and you will just play video games. That's it until you die. He's like, I would have sold my soul and signed that contract. Right? That was it. He was caught and he was sort of happy. It's like literally he was signing up to live in the Matrix. Right? And he was totally willing to do it. And he's like, today, and he was presenting to the other high school kids at Alpha. And he's like, today, I don't even have time to play video games. Right? Because he is building. Right? And so you absolutely, all these kids, but what they need to work on, if you put them in school for 6 hours a day in homework, you've made an environment where they're like, okay, my escape is to scroll TikTok and play video games because I'm not building, I'm not engaged, I'm not doing hard things. Like the third thing that I need parents to really believe that a lot of parents don't believe, you got to love school, right? You got to learn, crush academics in 2 hours a day. The third is the key to your child's happiness is high standards. And high standards are when they engage, they want to engage in hard things. They want to go build an app that's 100 million kids are going to use. That's going to, right? They want to go build that. And that's hard and they know it's hard, right? But they will, right? And that's why they'll come in and put the effort in, right? If you think about athletics, I don't know if you have an athletic background, but athletics, the athletic ethos in America, we actually believe all these things. We just don't believe when you apply it to academics, we think it the opposite. So Westlake, right? Parents in Austin are like, I want my kid on the Westlake football team because they're going to be state champions. It's going to be the hardest thing my son ever does, right? They're going to work. They do go in the summer for practice, right? They're in the weight room at night, right? They are doing the hardest thing they've ever done to be on the Westlake football team, right? But they'll remember it the rest of their life. But if you said that same thing, right, and said that's academics, right, or what the school day should be like, they're like, no, definitely not. I'm not going to have my kid do that. It's only in after-school athletics where we believe that.
It's so good. I mean, I hope you guys expand past even high schoolers at some point. Or to your point that somebody listening right now hears this, and somebody who has built billion-dollar businesses is getting so fired up about changing people's mentality in education. And what I'll say is like, it's the same thing I see with a lot of employees in our companies. There's actually some sort of disease or virus where we want to get by. We kind of want to get by. We do have the vision board maybe of a really cool life, but this idea of hard things as the key to loving life is something that we subscribe to. Here, our first line at Contrarian Thinking's Creed is those who say it's impossible should get out of the way of those of us who are doing it. And so we believe that deeply, but people don't last here very long if they don't believe that. And I kind of proactively will say to the team, if you ever say like, we can't do that, or that's not my job, like you're fired. And like you're welcome too, because hopefully it snaps you out of it and you go somewhere else. Do you find this brought, like not even in the kids, but in the talent, in the guides that you're hiring, in the employees in your companies? Am I jaded in that I'm saying there does appear to be, there's like these two worlds. One world where there's builders in Austin, like our mutual friend Brendan and, Dino, who I think you know from Saronic too, and they're just animals. And there's this one, and then there's this other side where there's so many people that I just want to shake them and be like, you have so much potential. What the fuck's going on? You're in your own way.
That world I completely agree with, and we believe every kid, right, can be a creator. The issue is they haven't found what their passion is. So when they come here and they're not engaged, it's because this isn't the hook, right? We talk about every kid has a passion for learning. It's just not always academics. So back to my story of my dad, I was a shirker in school. I was the slacker who I wasn't trying to do impossible things, right? I'm the one who was disengaged all the way through school, right? And then I drop out. My dad's like, you're a moron. But then there's a follow-on to that, which is 18 months later, he sits down with me and he's like, I'm so glad you dropped out, right? I'm so glad you dropped out because we'd been working 100-hour weeks, living under the desk, right? And he's like, you have found what you love. And he's like, before this, I was worried that you were a lazy little shit, right? And a parent's terrified of having that, right? And that's in school, that's what I was, right? But then once I found what I wanted, right? And you just take off. And we look at every student that we have. That's our job, is to find what is it that lights them up, right? And that's what why you have to say kids must love school more than vacation, because you found it. Anything else, it's a parent pushing their values on the kid, not what the kid wants to do. And so instead, you're like, oh, you want to build video games? We're going to let you build video games. You want to write sports? Like, so we are starting, right, a sports academy where if you love sports, right, you get to start sports in the afternoon, right? And you still have to do the rigor of the academics in the morning in the 2 hours, right? But those kids are going to be the best academic performing athletes in this country. But they're also going to engage in be a D1 bound middle schooler or a D1 aspirational middle schooler. And it's always tying things in to what the kids' passions are that unlock it. Like one of our life skills that we teach in the afternoon, teamwork and leadership, entrepreneurship and financial literacy, socialization and relationship building, storytelling, public speaking, and grit and hard work, right? Those are the things when we say, in the AI world, those are the life skills that kids really need. And so take public speaking. Okay, you go to a 10-year-old and you're like, public speaking. They're going to be like, okay, right? They're not going to engage. And you're like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you? It's such a valuable life skill. Oh my God, look what you can do. And the parents are lecturing and it's terrible. You say, wait, post-game press conference, right? You want to be able to go crush your post-game press conference. So at our sports academy, literally, we don't call it public speaking. We actually teach them how to do a post-game press conference. And they're like, and they become really good, right? They become great public speakers on that, right? Because that is their hook that engages them. If you talk about, oh, you have to learn all this math and financial literacy, like roll your eyes. You're like, we're negotiating your Nike contract, right? And all of a sudden, all the skills they need to learn, right? Let's take on the entrepreneurship side, gross margin, okay? What could be more boring to a fifth grader? Our fifth graders launch a food truck, right? And this was a day, this was last year. I go up to them and I'm like, why did you pick breakfast food, as your product for your food truck? And they're like, have you seen the gross margins on breakfast food? And I was just like, okay, this is so awesome, right? And they couldn't have been more excited about the business.
Nothing hotter than gross margins.
Right? And they are just sitting there and they are loving it and they're talking about it and they're thrilled and they're having to learn teamwork.
How old is this kid?
So these are fifth and sixth graders. So 2 years ago.
You're like 15? No,
12,
you're like 12.
Yeah, you're like 11, 12 years old.
I don't have kids. Does it show?
Oh, sorry. No, yeah. Excuse me. So yes, here's 11-year-olds who are out there and back to teamwork, right? And so they would go to like car dealerships and set up the food truck, right? It's all breakfast food. They'd make $1,000, but they were dealing with real world business things where one of the kids, the kid who's on the grill doesn't show up. And they're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to be able to do this? And all these kind of things. So all these kind of things you can do in the afternoon where you ignite kids' passion, right? That's the key. And I believe as we look, these skills that we talk about where you do the values chart in your 168 hours, kids will use that for the rest of their life. Those are the life skills because they will somewhere in their career. Me, 3 years ago, right? I'm like, oh, I guess I'm doing a big pivot from software to education. I'm going to go be a principal. Right? And how do I go get the skills and engage in it and all those? And so I think the skills we're teaching today are what adults will need going forward for sure.
Yeah, because it seems like you need both, or you can use either as a lever. And maybe explain it to me differently. But yes, kids need to love school, or they need to or you need to love what you're doing. But isn't it also that like you need to learn to love the game, or like you find what you love inside of it? Because it also seems like you have like, pure, whatever you call that, intrinsic love for X activity. And then you have like extrinsic love for an incentive such as dollars or outcome or reputation or whatever. And so do you need to play both of those?
So absolutely, which is you like what you're good at.
Yeah.
And so one of the things, like why people in athletics, why they hold kids back is they're going to be a little bigger, right? And then they're going to be better. And then because they're better, they like it because they're getting accolades and then they get more playtime and you get that positive
just
cycle
like
loop.
Pavlov's dog.
Yeah, and you just start getting into it and
Mm-hmm.
people want to do things they're great at.
Yeah.
In middle school, these girls would have said, no, I'm never going to do that. But now they're like, yeah, I can totally do that. And they want to stay because we showed them they can be good at it, right? People don't want to do things they're bad at. So if you're bad at something, right, it's how do you bootstrap them to get better? right? And that's why the old academic system doesn't work, is once you get behind or you are labeled bad, right? If you're a C student in third grade, there's like a 90% chance you'll be a C student for the rest of your life, right? It just, and that's not, there's no inherent brain chemistry around that. That's just a systems issue, right? The way we design school. But we can take those same C students and make them top 1% and show them, no, you could actually be really good at this. And we think that's true for all the life skills as well, right? Well, the Tough Mudder one, there's some new, 3 of these middle school girls, right? So they're, 12-year-olds. And, I asked them, they were new to the school and it was the week before the end of the session. And I was like, hey, break's coming up. Are you really excited? And they're like, no. And inside, because they didn't want to go on break. And I was like, inside I was happy, right? I did cheer because they wanted to keep going to school and not go on break. And I said, well, if you could wave a magic wand and fix anything about the school, what would you do? They're like, we wouldn't have to run the adult course for the Tough Mudder, right? They're like, that's so hard, right? But their guide who's motivating and showing them they can do it, I was like, go talk to some of the high schoolers who did it, right? And all the high schoolers have a picture of, all their whole team, right? Their whole classmate, they're all covered in mud, right? And they're all,
I've done it. It's
camaraderie.
miserable.
Right. But they're all there as a team and it's a team picture and they all still have it on their wall, right? Because they did something they didn't think they could do. Right. And that kind of thing, you have to bootstrap these kids. That's what school is, right? You're bootstrapping them to show them they can be capable here. And so a lot of these things, and when you talk about getting people into the right roles and what they should do, it is this Japanese ikigai of you're trying to figure out what are you good at and what do you love? And sometimes you're like, I really love this, but I'm not good at it. And on some things, you can bootstrap them into it, right? Like, okay, let's get you good enough so you can do it. And then once you hit that, right, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm capable.
So does intelligence have a big predictor on success?
That's a good question. So in K through 12 today, the best students, there's actually 2, it's all coded on 2 things, IQ and Big 5 conscientiousness. School today in a time-based system with a teacher in front of a classroom, you basically need to be high IQ and a conscient grinder, right? You have to be a natural grinder. And our view is I have to get this out to 1 billion kids, right? So I can't have those 2 limitations. So on the product side, we're like, how do we break those 2 things? So back to learning science, a mastery-based, individualized, personalized lesson plan solves the IQ issue to an extent, which is we can't make everybody, I'm going to do quantum computing and figure it out. But for sure in, K through 8, the K through 8 curriculum, if you take 95% of America, they could all be top 1%. That there's just nothing intellectually challenging enough, if done with a mastery-based education, with an individualized tutor, that they couldn't get to top 1%, right? I'm never going to be a nuclear physicist at Stanford, right? I don't have that IQ, right? So there are some upper bounds where it really matters, but for fundamentally of just teaching our kids, that's not true. But in a time-based educational system, it is. Because, when you're in 6th grade and there's a hole where you miss some knowledge, you basically need more IQ to bridge the gaps. But if you have an individualized tutor, it's going to go fill those gaps for you. The second on Big 5 conscientiousness, if you're a natural grinder, you're all set, right? We use our motivation model to compensate, which is how do I motivate this kid to grind, right? And get through it and do the hard work. And so and motivations, lots of different things.
Is there a formula for motivation?
So we spend, when we look at educating a kid, there's 2 parts to educating a kid. The first is, and 90% of it is having a motivated student. And so our schools are designed, 90% of my design work and our emphasis is on motivating. 10%, which is the second thing you need to put them in lessons of the correct difficulty, right? Which AI tutors do great. Right? They'll figure out what you know and don't know and say, look, I know your age grade is 6th grade, but you need 4th grade math. And I'm just going to give you 4th grade math, fill it up. But now I have to get you to want to do the 4th grade math. 90% that's motivation. So the number one motivator, like we have a huge motivation framework on our schools. The number one motivator and the name of our product is time back. Give kids their time back. There is nothing more than money, more than anything. Time back is the biggest motivator. And and so that's why we're 2 hours. If you want 6 hours a day in homework, right? If you take the Westlake honors track, right? You can't pay those kids enough to be happy. But if you go to those same kids like in our high school and say, it's 2 hours a day. If you want like 1550 plus on the SAT, it's 3 hours in high school. But that's it. And then you get all your afternoons for 4 years to work on your passion project. That motivates students, right? If you go to our sports academy and you're like, okay, I'm going to give you the whole afternoon, right, to play basketball, but you have to engage in the app for 2 hours. The kids are like, that's a fair trade. And just as a product manager, the story, my first week as principal, McKinsey and Brian had started it. They're like, okay, we'll let you be principal, but you got to live up to the commitments. They have to love school. And so I go to the fifth graders my first week and I'm like, you guys love school? And they're like, no. They're brand new. They're like, no. I'm like, okay, what would make you love school? They're like, less school. And I'm like, how much less? They're like, none. And I'm like, okay, that seems a little light, and we literally negotiated it. Right? I was like, so 2 hours a day. Would you engage in these apps? If I give you an app for 2 hours a day, if then 4 hours a day was awesome, fun stuff you loved. And they're like, okay, that seems fair, right? That's a fair trade. And so that's literally how we got
that was
to
like
2
your
hours.
First user
No, people
group.
were like, how do we get 2 hours? And they want some sophisticated analysis. I was like, okay, we got 2 hours and these kids say it's okay. Then I went to my learning science team and I said, can we, fill their brain with all the awesome knowledge they need in 2 hours? And they're like, absolutely. We totally can do it. And so that was sort of the beginning of it and that's why it was codename Time Back, but we actually made it the real name is give kids their time back. Then once you give kids their time back, there's tons of other motivations, right? So our teachers, right, we call them guides and coaches, they don't teach 7th grade science because the AI tutor does that better, right? So instead, they are hired for motivational and emotional support. And their job is to say, how do I motivate this kid to greatness? How do I get him to do hard things, right? And what are the things? And sometimes, in kindergarten, it's like, here's a sticker. Right? And the kid's like, oh my God, it's a sticker, right? Couldn't be happier, right? 8th grader's a little harder. Stickers don't work as well, right? But you're like, oh, the time on your passion project, right? Oh, you want to do a Broadway music. Wait, you want to write a book. Oh, wait, you want to go become an equestrian, right? And we'll let you out in the afternoon off time to go do that, right? Whatever the motivation is that will get them. You have a whole range, everything from time, there is money, financials and incentive, privileges, right? So like mobile squad. Yeah. And the Broadway privileges is also just freedoms in the school, right? If you crush all your academics and hit some goals, you get mobile squad, at the end of the session, and mobile squad gets to go on some trip somewhere, right? Or you get the privilege of learning in a beanbag, right? Like the younger kids where you're like, okay, you know how to learn on your own. You become a self-driven learner. You don't require a teacher or an adult to, babysit you. You learn on your own. You have the freedom. Like our middle schoolers get to go to the second floor where there's, less restriction and less rules, and they can sit in a beanbag and sit on their computer and learn or do whatever. So there's all these different things around motivation that allows kids to learn. Off-campus lunch, right? Everybody, younger kids, the number one motivator to the younger kids is lunch with their guide, right? They love their guides, right? How we measure our guides and teachers at the younger, like a kindergarten, you're like, do you love your guide? As you get older, the question we ask kids is, every adult had one or two teachers who transformed their lives. Is your guide that for you?
Whoa.
Right? And that is the standard. And that's what our guides do, is their job is to say, right, I'm going to help you achieve your goals, right? Your dreams. That's what I do all day, because I don't have to sit in front of the class lecturing or grade quizzes or whatever. I get to connect with the kids, right? And people talk about, okay, this is like AI is going to change the role and teachers are going to change in our world, right? But teachers did not become teachers to grade 7th grade science quizzes. They became teachers to transform kids' lives. And in our world, and why everybody wants to be an alpha guide, we had 80,000 people apply for our jobs. They want to be an alpha guide because they get to spend their entire day connecting with kids and helping them transform their lives into who they want to be.
You seem to have pretty high EQ. Would your wife disagree?
Yeah, my kids would too. Both my daughters. I have 2 daughters. And they both
I found in tech, it's not always a huge correlation between the two. Yeah. But now are you the same person you were when you were building Trilogy and these other companies now? No,
if 90s Joe, right?
Yeah.
And versus Family Man Joe, right, is totally different, right? And it was, I could not be the principal if I did not spend 20 years like raising my daughters and being a family man, getting married.
What were you like back then?
Then I was absolutely your consummate 90s tech bro guy. And
What does that mean? You were just intense and focused?
Intense and focused, and relationship and the EQ part, like a zero. Like what are you talking about? Just if it was a pure mathematical equation, well, obviously, logically, this is the answer, do this, right? And it was very much there. And this concept that relationship building, right, and building out your network, right, is so valuable, right? I mean, right, socialization, relationship building is one of our key life skills we teach the kids. I had zero of that, right, back in the 90s. And I'm like, why would you do that? I'm just going to build a better product or whatever. And the human component was, so far down on the list.
Yeah.
And versus today where, right, when we think of the skills we need to equip our kids for the future, those are the skills that matter, right? I mean,
a guy who's built multi-billion-dollar software companies, who was really happy doing this. I'm a little bit happier doing this too. I need to get over it. I'm working on it. But now you think that relationship building and human connection is more important?
I'll give you an example. And it's my own daughter as an example. My oldest daughter is an introvert like me, naturally introvert, and great student. So she got 1,600 SAT. She's a math, English double major at Stanford, right? So,
Slacker.
and she's one of these, she was the opposite of me on this. She loved academics for academics' sake. In high school, she like read calculus books for fun. When she got to Stanford, she's like, wow, these STEM boys can't write. So she created a writing program called equation-based writing. Because in freshman English, you have to grade. She's like, God, these are so bad. Let me help them out. So she's like, loves academics. But in high school, back her guide, I was like, look, what really matters for her is relationship building. Because she'll naturally just spend all her day doing academics. But in our school, we're like, the afternoons have to be about life skills development. So she started her own Substack, right? And writing online because she loved to write. But to promote it, right? She's like, okay, I have to go on Twitter and like build an audience.
Place is dark.
And
Careful.
I mean, her guide would sit there, and it took her guide 6 months of motivating her and convincing her and working her through till she'd send her first DM. Right. And she finally sent a DM to Sahil Bloom, right?
I'm buddies with him.
Right. And Sahil was like, had written something that she's like, oh, this is so applicable to high school kids, and literally wrote the article. Right.
Wait, what's your daughter's name? Or do not say that publicly?
On Substack, she's Austin Scholar.
I think I have engaged with her on Twitter or met her.
You may have. She has now 20,000.
Put it together.
So she has 20,000 moms basically who listen to her about what it's like to have no teachers for 10 years and go to Stanford. And what is her thing is university needs to change too. So she, her and the alpha kids.
Does she not get invited back to Stanford then?
No,
you both not? Or is Stanford open to it?
She's thriving at Stanford. But what's interesting is a school, schools are bundles of things, of which academics is only a piece, right? And
True.
And so she hates her 100 series lecture classes. She's like, okay, my math class is a complete waste of time because the apps I use, right, are way better. I learn way faster. She's like, but everything else at Stanford, her dorm mates, her classmates, right? She's in a sorority, right? Her after school activities, the environment of Stanford, she's thriving, even though she's like, okay, this math class for an hour is a total waste of time. And everybody knows that, right? Back to these same things. Harvard has published an article that says AI tutors are better than Harvard teachers, right? So it's not like we don't know this. It's just, how are we going to change as this goes forward? But back to the relationship building, and all of that, this key life skill she didn't need more academics. She didn't need physics 2 AP, in high school. She needed to spend her time supported by this guide, right? Because one of the other things you get in adolescence, you don't have kids yet, is they stop listening to their parents, right? In middle and high school, right? Their job is to, right, get accepted by society. So they start caring about their peers more than their parents, right? Which is always a transition for a parent to realize that, right? And so like when she was applying, it was Chloe she trusted, right? Who was her guide, who is like, Chloe, when she said, look, relationship building is important, it's like, okay, but it was really hard for her. And she needed that coaching, right? And support. It's high standards, but high support. It's not just drop them in the deep end. It's coach her through it. And then eventually she got it, and now she has this great network. Right. But and so those kind of skills, if you have a relationship person, you're also, to the arts theater girls, right? You're like, okay, guys, you're going to do math. Right? You are going to do math. We're going to show you have all these skills. And if you're the academic, we're going to teach you relationship building or entrepreneurship or whatever else over there. If you are the EQ girl already, right? We have girls who have millions of TikTok followers, and we're like, yeah, you're going to get 790 math, right? One of our kids is about to do something that in science that like nobody in American history and science has ever done this in high school, right? And if you had asked as a middle schooler, would they do it? The answer was no.
When you look at education today and where we're at, like, do you think we can actually re-educate the entire, let's even just say the U.S. using the technology we have?
100%.
How long will it take?
Well, this is why what I want to communicate. My goal in this is we need entrepreneurs and builders to come in. If we keep on the status quo, not going to happen, right? It's a 100-year-old system. It's not changing.
And what
right?
happens if we don't change?
It's really bad.
Like paint a picture. As somebody who deeply understands AI and education.
Well, the skills you're going to need, like back to just if we graduate, then if we spend 10 years and educate kids the way we've been educating for 100 years, those kids are going to go into an AI world and have no skills that matter, right? And people are going to say, why? I just wasted their whole childhood, right? And I made it miserable and they hate it, these things. And they don't have the skills that need, right? Like when we look at the world, right? If you're an Uber driver in Austin, right? Robotaxis, right? Waymos, all this stuff. That's not a good place to be as an adult. There's massive transition on the adult. And entrepreneurs need to go fix that. But I'm focused on the K through 12, which is there is no better time to be a 5-year-old because AI gives kids superpowers, right? If you look at, they can learn 10 times faster in the mornings, right? Not give them ChatGPT. That's really bad. They'll all use a cheat, right? Chatbots are cheat bots if you're a parent. If you're wondering if your kid's using chat on academics, 90% of the time they're cheating. But in the afternoons when they're doing life skills workshops and launching a food truck, right? 11-year-olds don't know how to launch a food truck. And there's not a teacher who can teach them, but AI is going to help them figure out how to do it. High schoolers can't launch Broadway musicals, right? Except AI gives these kids superpowers. And we need to show them, right? It unlocks their potential. Right. And they love it and it's exciting and we can totally transform all that. And so that if you're a parent, you're just like, this could be the best 12 years of your kid's life. Right. And we need to go change it. And now to change it, though, we need way more entrepreneurs than just me.
Because it can't be cheap, too. Like going to Alpha School, what does it cost?
Yeah. So Alpha School is expensive. So our tuition's $40,000 to $75,000. And so back to design goal, though, when I designed it, I was like, pretend price is no object. What can you do? Now, we are building a whole nother set of schools, right, at half the price, at $20,000. We spend in America $20,000 a kid to educate them. So that's sort of my price target. We're launching, right, and we've launched 10 of them so far. We hope to open hundreds next year of these Texas sports academies. They're $15,000 tuition. Middle school, right, they're micro schools. They're 25 kids. Middle school D1 bound athletes. Think 25 really good basketball players, right, in middle school who do academics in the morning, basketball in the afternoon. And so think of hundreds of these schools around Texas. At $15,000, which the voucher program just was announced, which is like $12,000. So parent pay will be like $300, $400 a month, right? So dramatically more accessible than Alpha. And so we're building a whole set of schools like this. I need lots of entrepreneurs to go build this, right? We need a school for gifted and talented kids, right? Those kind of things, sports, arts, theater, music.
Because if you don't, you could have a world in which you basically have massive discrepancy. Those who are taught at Alpha School use AI, are unlocked, and everybody else.
Correct. Oh, you absolutely. Like I have my job on this whole thing is, Alpha is the first product we're building. It is the high-end one. Just branding wise, you have to own the high end in education, right? You can't, you want to start at the high end. You want to be the Ivy League, right?
Yeah, you don't want to be the discount degree.
Correct. Parents don't know about education, so brand really matters. They trust brand.
Yeah.
And so you have to go establish the brand, which we've done, right? We're the most talked about school in the world by 10x, right? And so that's what Alpha's doing, but now we're bringing it down. And so we're building the software platform where it will be available. And, to solve the US, I have to get to 20,000. But to get to 1 billion kids, I got to get it down to 1,000, right? I have to get it down to where, in 5 years, everybody on the planet, billion kids, have to be able to access a tablet that's less than $1,000 that will teach them everything they need to know in 2 hours, right? And so that's what our design goal is getting it down so that everybody can have it. Because we have to, because in this world of AI, we have to prepare the kids differently than we have the last 100 years.
Does that daunt you? Or are you like, we're going to do that?
Oh, we're totally going to do it. The learning science, it's a lot of work, obviously, right? There's a ton of work, back to the Billionaire side. Like I put in $1 billion to kickstart this.
Just to Alpha, right?
Yeah. Well, the software platform and stuff. So we're doing in the sports academy. So I'm funding a set of different things. But to change education, so education's a $7 trillion market. Like $1 billion's a drop in the bucket, right? Texas alone spends $100 billion a year on education, right? So societies and parents spend a lot of money on education. Like if you do surveys of parents, they will spend up to 10% of their income on educating their kid. So it is actually a really good market. Societies generally spend 5% of GNP. So it is this great market. It's just we've always had the same system for 100 years. And now what's different is, okay, can we go get entrepreneurs and builders to come in and build these awesome products, right, that will transform what the 12 years is like?
We, it's interesting you say that because we have an education business. It's called Contrarian Thinking, and we teach people two things. One, we teach them how to buy businesses. Like normal, my theory was, I was in private equity, I did acquisitions, and I thought, this is not that different. Like what the PE guys do at the highest level, leveraged buyouts, is not that different materially from what you do with an SBA loan or with seller financing of a very small business. You've bought a shit ton of businesses. And so it's not easy. It's actually hard and awful and really difficult in many ways, but it's not rocket science. It's actually not that complex. It's like, simple but not easy. And so we created an education company where we are attempting to teach. We've taught about 10,000 people how to do it. And if the average, the average American doesn't even own a business. And so it's really hard to get good data on how many people will ever acquire a business. But we think it's like less than 0.01%. Like most people will never acquire a business. It's very weird. So if we're able to take, right now we're about 37% of our people who come through our program acquire a business. And it's really important. You don't just acquire any business because there's a lot of risk. But what's fascinating to me is when we started teaching people how to do this, the immediate response from many people, and it seems to be like a pervasive, I can't really figure out why, is like, one, if you could do it, why wouldn't you just buy all the businesses yourself, Cody? Why would you teach other people to do it? Two, education is somehow seen as, and there's a lot of bad actors, so maybe why, but it's seen as like lowbrow, scammy, couldn't work, not good, taking advantage of people. And then it's also seen as like maybe not sophisticated. Like, oh, if you were really going to build something real, you would build Trilogy. You wouldn't build an educational based system.
If you can't
right.
teach.
Like, why is that? It's so pervasive.
Correct. And
why?
So that is, so if we want to get controversial, so I believe part of my role is to bring capitalism to education. And it is seen that capitalism is evil. For-profit and capitalism are evil in education, just straight out. No, that nonprofit is the only way to do it. And fundamentally, I believe that's part of the problem, which is nonprofit. I gave a talk at Masters of Scale, which is, how to scale big ideas.
Yeah.
And education doesn't scale and the reason is nonprofit means non-scalable. Like if I have a set of donations, right, and I build the world's best product, the better the product, the faster my money goes away. And now I'm done. Yeah. Right? There's plenty of charter schools who have 3,000 person wait lists. And I go ask the head of the school, I'm like, well, why don't you open another campus? And they're like, I'm waiting on a $40 million donation. Versus I had 1,000 people at an info session in New York City who are going to pay tuition to this for-profit. I will have no problem raising capital to open a new building because of its for-profit. Capitalism scales, right? This $1 billion that I threw in, that's not enough to fix education. We have to show what's going on, right? We have to show there's great businesses here. And so, but there's a view, appropriately so, there were bad actors and lots of for-profit scams. We just need to go get the good entrepreneurs who can use capitalism for good, right? Like one of the things we do is it's why we publicize all our academic results, that we are like, guys, don't trust us. You shouldn't trust us. Look at our results, right? And but unlocking human capital.
Well, that's what, and the results mean SAT scores, right?
In this case, academics or the life skills. It's the 3 commitments. Parents are like, oh my God, my kid really does love school, right? And they're like, you actually as a parent, when it happens, you're like, okay, this is great. Then the second part is, okay, they're crushing their academics. And then that third, life skills, when they're launching the food truck, you're like, okay, this is actually what my kid needs to do, or they're building relationships or whatever that life skill. No, they watch the Tough Mudder. They're like, okay, this was better than my school. So they look at that product. You just need a product focus. And like for yours, here's how I would design the product, right? In a for-profit world. So we have a set of high schoolers who are like, okay, we're going to build a program to be a millionaire in high school. How do you make $1 million in high school? Right. And so they're talking about pricing. And so one of their proposals is we're going to charge $150,000 a year tuition, money back guarantee if you don't make $1 million. So it'll take $600,000 of tuition over 4 years. But if you make $1 million, it pays for it. Right. And it's a money back guarantee. So if they don't deliver, back to your point of your scammy, you're like, it's free for the person, right? And it's that kind of product design that no nonprofit would do that. But a entrepreneur who's saying, oh, wow, that's the kind of thing that we should go build, where you have this closed loop where you're unlocking their potential. And then people are willing to pay that. People would make that trade. They're like, wow, if you teach me how to make $1 million, right, while I'm in high school, and it's going to be fun, I'm going to love it, it's going to be all these great things. And we have to make sure of how we're teaching them. We're not teaching them how to do it, scam. One of our final character, right? Character, community, classmates, and culture, right? That's one of the huge elements of school. And at the end of the day, character is the one parents really care about. Are you teaching these kids to be good kids? People. We can teach kids to build ethically awesome businesses, right? They're building apps. They could build crappy apps. They're building an app to teach 100 million kids to contribute to their community, right? So we can teach all these great values to kids as part of school. That's one of the jobs. And we can teach them ethical business at the same time.
Okay, last question. What about for people who are really scared to have AI teach their kid?
Yeah, that's a great question. You should be terrified. So today, your kid, 20% of kids, right? I think Brendan uses this stat that they calculated. 20% of your kid's life is influenced by AI. They are being brainwashed by TikTok today, right? This is that, or Fortnite, whatever is out there. It is, and it's getting worse. And what you put into kids' heads really matters. And so one of the things is you have to figure out who are the trusted people putting it in. It's why I say chatbots are cheat bots, and they're terrible. Like if we could ban like those chatbots being in school, that would be great. And so part of what our job, back to branding and stuff, you have to build a trusted relationship with parents that what you're putting into the kid's head is good. Right? Now, what I can do with AI, right, is actually build one where the parents can validate and trust it, right? So we know what it is, right? But if you have it just, Wild West freeform and you're not doing it, like what is your kid doing online, right? That is something, it can be very bad and people should be worried. AI could be good or bad, right? And we need to have a huge effort to make sure that we use it for good. Wow. We have a project where we are building the TikTok that is engaging as TikTok, but it's going to put all the cool stuff into your kid's head, not the bad TikTok stuff.
We need it. Although, people talk pretty badly about TikTok these days, and I'm a big Elon fan, but I have found that like TikTok algorithm is actually pretty easy to change and manipulate. And so, on my TikTok, there's a few things I like. I like those. I get rid of the others. I don't really see any nonsense. I don't see brain rot. I don't see any of that. I do think these days on X, it's harder. There's so much negativity. And I think it might be more sophisticated, but I think optimists, they sound too Pollyanna, but they make all the money. And pessimists sound smart and then make nothing.
Yeah. Well, and to this on online, we believe teaching kids healthy online habits matter.
Yeah.
And how you're talking about, you're curating a TikTok feed that's healthy for you, right? You can also curate a bad one.
Yeah.
And if you don't teach kids how to do it right, they'll end up with a bad one.
Yeah.
And I actually believe, because we have kids on X doing the same thing, you can curate a great feed on X.
Yeah,
of
I'm working on
domain expertise and all, heavily using mute words and all that stuff where, your block list and mute word list has to be really long. Twitter has a lot of experts where if you want to learn about learning science, if you want to learn about learning science, you can build a filtered list on X where you can become an expert in how to learn 10 times faster.
Yeah.
So it's all these things. They can be good or bad, right? And you have to figure out how to actively curate your presence. And also back to tracking, having kids track where they spend their week, this 168 hours, helps them, right? I don't just want to be a consumer. Yeah. I want to become a creator. And that's what, as parents, we should all care about.
Is there some resource you love or something that you have from Alpha, an article you've written that we can mention and say, if you want that, click here, and then we can drive people direct to you?
My daughter will love me if I do this. Austin Scholar. She's got, 200, she writes every week. She's got 200, articles out. It literally is from, 10 years of not having, a teacher in this new world, what it's like to go to college in it. And it's academics plus, the social emotional learning side.
I love it. We'll link
that. Would be, we'll put that in.
Also,
that's the single best source. That's the single best source.
That's a good dad right there.
So,
proud dad. Joe, this is so cool to hear about. You have my brain spinning about ideas here. And I just want to thank you for building something that is not, one of my CEOs used to say to me back in the day when I first started getting online, he said, you know what, here we get rich quietly. And it was, and I get that because it was his thing he had built. He had built this incredible business that he had every right to do it. But I thought, I don't know. I don't think it's a zero-sum game. And so I started getting on the internet for that reason. And I think people like you sharing this and creating an area for education is like the only way we fix so much of what I see on the internet every day.
I couldn't agree more. And if I can convince some of your listeners, right, some of your audience to come over to education, there is nothing. So back to my whole career, I obviously had a good career pre being a principal. The last 3 years have been the best years of my life. And I'm going to do this 20 years. I am more excited about the next 20 than my last 20. And I need to go get other builders and entrepreneurs to come over here and see how awesome it is, right? And so if you're like that, send me an email, DM me, and let's get you building to solve education. Because at the end of the day, there is nothing more important for a society than how it raises its young. That is the single societal issue that really matters. And so come work on that.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Automation is to your time what compounding interest is to your money.
If you have ever wanted to grow on social media, to be seen as an expert in what you do, to leverage audience to make more money, to get more sales, and to figure out how the biggest names in the world actually got there, this interview is for you. This is an interview with Rory Vaden, who is a multiple times New York Times bestselling author himself. And he has created what I would say is the formula for growing online, growing audience, and then figuring out how do you make more money in your business and your life once you become an expert.
When you have a genuine passion for helping other people, and if you can obsess about it, the way that Dave's obsessed about getting people out of debt, the way that Lewis obsesses about helping people overcome self-doubt, your world starts to change, and you start to change the world of the people around you.
You have a lot of systems and ideas for how you get people to think in frameworks.
Think about it like a rocket. Your personal brand should be the sort of side boosters that you use to get the business off the ground. But then once you get it launched out into space, then your personal brand falls off and the business can just sort of follow a trajectory and live on without you.
Interesting.
The best form of marketing in the world is
This is the Big Deal Podcast, and I'm Codie Sanchez. This interview is really interesting. It's hyper tactical. If you don't want to learn about how to make more money online and you don't want to learn about how to grow online, you're going to hate this interview. But if you do like that, I would sit down, grab a pen, listen up, maybe listen to it twice, because this man has not only done this for himself, but for many, many others. Without further ado, I want to bring you my dear friend Rory, and I want to get into it. So when I was thinking about writing my book, and then I was thinking about marketing my book, there was sort of one human I called all the time, which was you. And we talked about, man, how do I get on the right stages? How do I make this go really viral? Who are the people that are behind sort of the biggest names in the world? And your name obviously came up, and we've shared many a stage now across the country. But, today I thought we could start.
By the way, that book went New York Times bestseller, baby. Didn't it? It sure did.
And you said we were going to, too. I was like, I don't know. Is it?
It was awesome. I'm proud of you, dude.
Well, thanks. You helped a lot. We, many a late night text, and we were joking, but I hate voice notes. You love voice notes. So I had to outlaw them.
We had conflict.
I know, exactly. Except they were so good that I had to listen to them, which was so annoying for me, too.
And then I learned a lot because you were like, "Hey, I need you to communicate with me in writing," and I was like, "Okay, that's good. I will write it. I will write it out for you."
Codie is honest. Codie is too honest. But where I thought we could start for people today was, I believe that the internet and attention is the most powerful weapon that you have today in the 21st century. And if you have money, you can buy attention. But if you don't have money, you can't buy attention. And so for people today, I was kind of thinking, if we could break this down from, let's say right now, you have no audience, no followers, where would you start?
Yeah. I mean, you have to start by changing how you think about online. I mean, I think when we talk about personal branding, people, their mind goes crazy to like TikTok and algorithms and brand guidelines and colors and logos and fonts. The way that we define it is that personal branding is simply the digitization of your reputation. So what I would want, if you're just starting out, what I would say is, remember that this is reputation. It is as old as time. Like, what matters more than the number of followers you have is the depth of trust that your followers have with you. And so people get all freaked out about like who they're going to be on camera and what they're going to say. And it's like, be who you are in real life. Be someone that is an expert. Be someone who adds value to people, be someone who adds value to people's lives and build trust first and foremost.
Love it. So if we were going to get super tactical.
Yeah.
So first we got to start out with getting an online following is really just reputation increase, right? But if somebody came to me and they were like, I want to grow my personal brand fast and I want to follow your system, Rory, what would be the first couple of steps that you would tell them? Do you have like a steps 1 through 10?
Sure. Here's what I would say. Don't start with why, start with who. So I love Simon Sinek, but when you're building a personal brand, what matters most is being clear on who you're talking to. Once you're clear on who you're talking to, every other downstream decision becomes clear. What are their problems? What content will attract them? What can I sell to them? How much can they afford? What do they need? Where are they? How do I reach them? If you are unclear on your who, every other decision becomes fuzzy. Like, what do I say? What do they want to hear? What topics? If you have diluted focus, you get diluted results. So you have to get crystal clear on who you're talking to. Now, the shortcut on this to figure out who is your who, what we realized is that for all of us, you are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. You are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. That's the fastest path to get clear on your who. And once you nail that, now all of a sudden I can serve that person in the deepest way. And now all of a sudden you have a chance to make content that breaks through the noise. So that's the first place. You start with who.
That's so true, which is basically just like in business, you build an avatar. You build your digital avatar who's going to be the person you sell things to. Mm-hmm. And if you're selling attention, it's the same exact thing, right?
Absolutely.
And the biggest problem I think most founders have is they think, oh, it's my product. I need to sell this coffee. The coffee's not selling because the coffee's not perfect enough. But often your problem is actually you don't know who you're selling to, and so you never can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And look what you're doing. I mean, you are serving the person you once were. You're teaching people how to do all of the things. Same with us, right? What are we doing? We're helping experts, entrepreneurs, speakers, authors, coaches, whatever, because we've been in this space our entire career. That's the shortcut.
Let me guess. You've got one tool for email, one for SMS, and another for forms, maybe a separate dashboard for analytics, and somehow you're still not sure if anything's working? That's, I think, the reality for most e-commerce brands. Bloated tech stacks that eat time, wreck your margins, and require a full-time ops person just to function. OmniSend changes that. It's a single platform where email, SMS, sign-up forms, automations, segmentations, and analytics all live in one clean dashboard. You get powerful tools without the learning curve or the price creep. You can launch campaigns in minutes, not hours, and you can buy customer journeys that trigger automatically based on behavior. And the data, it tells you what's working, what's not, and where to double down. Whether you're running lean or managing a growing team, OmniSend makes your marketing operate like a real system, not a to-do list. So if your stack feels like duct tape and prayer, it's time to upgrade. OmniSend was built for brands that are serious about scale. So after you figured out your who, what is next if you want to grow online?
Be able to answer this one question in one word. What problem do you solve for that person? If you look at some of the biggest personal brands in the world, I think of like Brené Brown. Brené Brown owns the topic of shame. She has studied shame for decades, and she became one of the world's leading thinkers, one of the most influential people in the world because she owns that topic. You look at Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey owns the topic of debt. Like, he owns that. He owns that word. This is part of how I broke through the wall originally in our first company. All I did was study procrastination, was the psychology of getting people to do things they didn't want to do, right? My first book was Take the Stairs, and it was just a metaphor for how to get yourself to do the stuff you hate doing. Brand Builders Group now, the word that we solve is obscurity. All we do is help people become more wealthy and well-known. So most personal brands cannot speak with a level of clarity about what is the problem they solve for people. And in order for people to pay attention, I have to be able to solve a problem for them, or I at least have to be useful for them. So I would try to narrow that down to one word. And then I would also make a list of maybe 52 questions that your prospect has about the problem that you solve for them. Mm-hmm. And I would start systematically addressing them. Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to go, how can I be so useful that they can't ignore me? How can I be so valuable that they have to pay attention? When I got introduced to you, it's like when you meet high profile people, you can't just jump in and sell them stuff. The goal should be, how can I be so useful they have to pay attention to me? At least that's the goal. That's our strategy.
It's actually so true. A lot of times people will say, how do you get a mentor? How do you get a mentor? And I think the answer to how you get a mentor is exactly that. Make yourself so useful that you become so valuable to them for $0 that they end up eventually wanting to pay you a lot of zeros. And it is this weird flip. And I think a lot of people struggle with that early on because they're like, well, I don't know anything. How am I going to be useful to a Rory, right? Or how am I going to be useful to a Dave Ramsey? But they don't realize that all of us, we have actually just massively more needs. The more successful you become, the more holes you have to fill.
Totally.
And so anywhere that you find some curiosity for a super famous person or for a super successful person, and you think, God, I just want to go down this rabbit hole. And I looked at their website and I found all the spots that I didn't understand. And I went to their social media and I created like 3 ideas for videos that they didn't have. And I just gave them the scripts. It's almost like this upfront work gives all of this back end opportunity.
Absolutely. And I would say philosophically, that's another thing that the best personal brands in the world do is they give first, they serve first, and they allow the money to show up second. It's like paying in rears versus paying in forwards, right? So there's some services we pay and then we get the service. But in the online world, it's like I have to automate trust at scale. One of our mantras that we say is save the best for first. Save the best piece of content you have for the very next thing that you teach. Like you don't have to be scared about giving away all your good stuff and then no one buying. You have to be scared about not giving away anything good enough that nobody ever comes back. So you have to always push yourself to be like, again, it's that value throttle. And it's like, how can I increase the throttle here on adding value to everyone around me? And that applies, I think, offline and online. But, I mean, the reason people pay attention to you is your content is so freaking good. It's so useful. And I think when you're picking your content strategy, I mean, high level, it's one of the 3 E's. We call it the 3 E's. You're either entertaining, and I'm not that entertaining, but some of you are. Some of you can be. You have encouraging, so you can be inspiring and uplifting, and I try to be a little bit of that. But for most of our clients, it's educational, and it's going, what can I teach? And everyone thinks, oh, I don't have anything to teach. And you go, unless you're serving the person you once were. Then all of a sudden, all of us are qualified to teach because we've experienced the pain. We've overcome the obstacle. We've walked through the setback. And now all of a sudden, that's all the credibility that I need.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And it's, one of my mentors said to me, when you get in rooms with people who have more zeros than you, they can actually see into your future because they've been there. And so it's the same idea of, I remember the first time before I was making $1 million a year, before the business was making 8 figures, before the business hit 9 figures, I just got lucky in being in rooms where other people already had the business that I wanted. And it, what was wild is because I got to sit next to, John, who had a business that was already doing $8 million a year back when mine was doing $1 million a year. John basically said, oh, here's going to be the next 5 issues that you have. And so because I knew that, since he had already been through it, I got to steal his 10,000 hours. I got to compress 7 years into 1 year from his interaction.
Yeah.
And so it's a real value, I think, that people don't realize, that if you have something to share from your historical lessons, you're doing the world a solid when you put it out there. And I didn't realize that at first, because I thought people who taught just couldn't do. We've all heard that adage. And I also thought, well, God, if it works so well, why are you telling other people? Why wouldn't you just go do it yourself? And I remember seeing like a clip. We could actually play the clip here, which is from Mark Cuban. And his clip basically said, if they're telling you about how to do it on the internet, it doesn't work, because if it worked, they'd just go do it. And I thought that was so funny. Sounds great. Except it's wrong, because what actually happens is when you give more, you get way more in return. And why do you think some of the richest men in the world, Ray Dalio, for instance, are out telling his theory? Because he gets more clients from it. He gets more deals from it. He gets more hires from it. So I think it's super, super powerful to do all of this.
Yeah. Well, and I would purport that there's another massive piece of the transaction that you don't hear enough about, which is, yeah, you get money. Yeah, you get followers. Yeah, you get influence. The other thing you get is significance. Yeah. You get purpose. There is nothing like the feeling you get when you help somebody else succeed, right? And you go, well, if you're so rich, why don't you go do it? And it's like, well, there's a point where you go, I'm not playing because I need more money. I get my thrills. Like, no kidding. When I walked into your office downstairs, the thing I was so excited to see was right next on your wall is a picture of your book cover that says New York Times bestseller. Yeah. I'm so much more excited when a client has a level of success than even with our own these days. Yeah. Because you climb that ladder enough times and you realize it's great, and it's worth doing, but it's still, you're moving the goalpost. There's always someone bigger than you, something better. There's something, ahead. But when you help somebody succeed, it's not just it's a feeling you get. It creates context and value for your life. And I think that's what not enough people are talking about with the internet. And the other thing is, you also don't need to have millions of followers to make millions of dollars. No. One thing that the people watching this need to understand is very few people are going to be you. Very few people are going to reach millions and millions and millions. The good news is not everybody has to. It's actually it tends to be easier for the average person to make more money by serving fewer people in a deeper way, right? Than it is to serve lots of people in a very shallow way. It's like don't be so focused on the width of your reach that you overlook the depth of your impact. Because just because you have a cat video go viral and you get lots of followers, that doesn't mean that people are going to trust you and buy from you, right? Just because a lot of people are watching doesn't mean they're going to give you their money. Now, you might make money from the platforms, but even that tends to be pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
If I can serve a really small audience in a deep way, if I can be their favorite, if I can be their most trusted, if I can be the person that they look forward to consuming their post, that they don't just look in their feed, that they search my name, then I go, that person is likely to hire me. And not just buy a $20 book, but someone who might spend a few thousand to tens of thousands of dollars in a program. For most people watching, that's the actual path to get rich. It's to serve a smaller audience in a deeper way. At least I think that's the more scalable way to do this.
Give some examples of that, because I totally agree with you. And I think actually there's a lot of downsides to super big reach, which is you have to almost water down your message slightly to go so wide. And it has a direct anti-correlation to conversion, aka getting people to buy things from you. And so there's plenty of people who make way more money in their businesses with a much smaller audience set. But like, give some examples. Like, what would that be?
Well, one example would be us, honestly. So, a lot of people have heard of our clients, right? Like Ed Milet and Lewis Howes and Amy Porterfield, like these really amazing clients that we work with. A lot of them have millions of followers.
Yeah.
We do not.
Yeah.
Right? But we're generating multi-8 figures, and you're going, how? We only have 1,000 customers. And it's actually because of a technique that we call fractal math.
No.
Okay, we need to talk about this. Okay, so for those of you that aren't numbers people, just stick with me for a second. I'll keep it simple. Fractal math is a strategy that we teach that says 10% of your customers will invest at a level 10 times more than they just did if you give them more intimacy.
Yep.
So let's say you have 1,000 customers and a $30 product. Okay, that's $30,000 in revenue. If you said, how can we double our business? Most people would think, go get another 1,000 customers. And that's not wrong, but that is the most expensive way to double a business, because the most expensive customer is a new customer. So it's not that you shouldn't do that, or that you can't do that, or that it doesn't work. It does work, but there's another way to do it. The other way to do it is to use fractal math. So if you had 1,000 people give you $30, fractal math says that 10% of those, which would be 100, will give you $300 if you give them a level up in intimacy. And then 10% of which is, by the way, that's another 30,000.
Yep.
And then 10% of those, which would be 10, would give you $3,000. And 10% of those, which would be 1, would give you $30,000. Here, you've quadrupled the revenue without a single dollar in customer acquisition cost. That's what I mean by going deep. It's by serving a smaller audience in a deeper way. And again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to serve millions of people. But the very definition of reaching millions of people means you have to create content that is applicable to millions of people.
Yep.
Which means it tends to be money, relationships, spirituality, health, politics, right? Like and you tend to kind of have to stay high level. To play that game, it's hard to also serve people in a really, really deep way. Yeah. It takes a lot of resources to play that width game. So anyways, it's just realizing that there is another way to do this. So you could be a chiropractor and go, I'm going to service a small number of clients in a deeper way. You could be a counselor and say, say you're a marriage coach. It's one thing to have viral videos about marriage. You also can sell books, but you go, are there a few couples that I could truly counsel and go deep with? And, as intimacy increases, price increases.
Yeah, it's wild. So basically, if you wanted to quadruple your business with one move, it would be that. And it's not so much more sophisticated than pricing. But it's really understanding that there's this correlation between pricing and intimacy when it comes to, let's say, knowledge products. It's wild. Over the last 2 weeks, you are the only reason this podcast has grown. I don't know if you're new here or you've been here for a while and y'all just started sharing more, but you were the only reason that we continue to climb the charts and hopefully provide more and more value for you. We just moved up from top 100 to top 50 in biz on Spotify, which is cool. So thank you for sharing with your friends, and thank you for sharing with your employees, and thank you for sharing in your Slack groups and social media and everywhere else. And if you like this podcast, please do send it to another human that you care about, because you are a big deal to me, and I know they are a big deal to you too. So that's a beautiful thing to do. Thank you for sharing the pod. I know you have something special for anybody that's listening today. If they want to go and get a free...
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with people one-on-one. We work in a very intimate way. So if anyone is listening to this and they feel the calling to go, I want to share my expertise with more people. I want to share my story with more people. If you go to freebrandcall.com/Cody, you can request a call with our team, and we do the first call with everybody for free.
And you'll tell them if it's not a good idea for them.
Yeah,
to do a personal brand.
The first thing, honestly, what we're going to want to do is we're just going to want to hear your story.
Yeah.
We want to go, tell us your story. Where are you at on this journey? How fresh is this idea? Do you have a team? Do you not? And we can work with people at all different levels. Not everyone we work with is Codie Sanchez. Most of them are like starting
You
out.
don't want more than one of those. She's a handful.
But and we will tell people, we'll say, hey, we feel like we can help you.
Yeah.
And there are certain people that we go, we can really, really help you. We call them mission-driven messengers. It's the people who are not just trying to make money, not just trying to grow their reach, the people who are on an absolute crusade to go, this is a calling for me. Those people culturally are going to be the best fit for us. And there's certain parts that we can really help them with. And if we can't, we'll point them somewhere else.
I want to talk about, you've worked with, a million different celebrities and sort of online influencers. You run the real gamut. What celebrities do you think are nailing personal brand the best today?
Well, so I think I'll use the two of our most flagship clients would be Lewis Howes and Ed Milet. And I'll tell you the story about Lewis. Okay. So one of our central philosophies, I've said this already, is if you have diluted focus, you get diluted results. When we first started working with Lewis in 2018, we took him through an exercise that we call the revenue streams assessment. And we listed all these revenue streams on the board, and he had 17 revenue streams. And he was like really proud of that because he's like multiple streams of income. The problem is that he only had like 12 people on his team. That's a lot of revenue streams to manage with only 12 people. And so the only thing we ever did for Lewis, Lewis gives us a lot of credit publicly. Like, frankly, we have not done much for him. But the one thing that I did kind of do for Lewis, I said, Lewis, what would happen if you shut all of this stuff down and just went all in on this podcast thing? Because for him at the time, he had about 30 million downloads, and it took about 8 years to get there. Wow. And the podcast was a traffic source. He was really making money from courses at the time. But the reason I mention him, Cody, is because he had a mastermind that was generating multi-seven figures in revenue. And in one conversation, he told me, he said, look, my real vision is I want to impact 100 million people every week. And I said, well, if that's true, and this focus thing is true, what if you went all in on that? And he, out of one conversation, walked up and shut down a $2 million revenue stream in one conversation. And he went all in on the podcast. And what happened was he went from 30 million downloads in the next 2 years to 500 million downloads. That is a decision about purpose. That is a decision to stay true to what the vision is. To say, I care more about making a difference than I do about making a dollar. Now, they're not mutually exclusive. Lewis has made plenty of money, but he did make a short-term financial sacrifice to go all in on the vision. That is, I think, an epic story that is not something that data could really tell you to do. It was an instinctual decision. So I love that. The other person that I'll use Ed Milet. I've gotten a chance to know with Ed. We got to work with him a little bit over the years. Ed Milet does not need any more freaking money.
No, he doesn't. I've been to his house, one of them.
Yeah,
and they're very, very large.
They're very large and lavish and amazing. Why is Ed Milet speaking on stages? He doesn't need the money. He's doing it because he actually gives a crap about helping people. And this is what I believe is the future of the online influencer. It's not just so much, what's the algorithm? How do I test the thumbnails? How do I split? Those are tactics that are important. They're like fundamentals of the business. But in a world of AI that solves those problems, that can generate thumbnails and can split test things and can optimize ad spends and landing page conversion, what's going to separate is actually the humanity of the messenger. The person who goes, I'm here because I actually give a crap about making your life better. By the way, this is the thing that attracted me to you, was that when I saw you, I saw someone who didn't need money. I know that you're financially motivated, which is great. But what really attracted me to you was that you said, I want to help Main Street America. I want to take the money, not just steal money from people, but I want to teach the principles of Wall Street, and I want to take that to the people on Main Street. I think the reason you succeed, Cody, is not just because you have a great team and you guys use data and you're smart and you're intelligent and you do all the systems. The reason you succeed is because people can tell that you care about helping them. You're actually on a crusade. And I would suggest that the more that AI levels the playing field of the tactics, the more that human energy matters. That's what I'm drawn to, and that's what I think people are drawn to. So I go, who are the people that genuinely care? Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, another client of ours. When Dr. Lyon, we first started working together, I don't know, she had 100,000 Instagram followers. I don't know what she has now, but it's many times over that. I don't know how much money she's making. I know that she's impacting lots of people. And I know that when we first started working together, that's what she cared about.
Yeah.
This is Dave Ramsey, right? I introduced you to Dave Ramsey. I've known Dave Ramsey since he had 100 employees. He has 1,000 employees now.
Yeah.
They do multi-9 figures a year in annual revenue. There's a lot of people that don't like Dave Ramsey, and there's plenty of things he says that are controversial. But Dave is on the freaking radio every day for 3 hours, 30 years later still. Why? He didn't need money 2 decades ago.
Nope.
He's on the radio because he gives a crap about helping people be out of debt, because he tells the story of what it was like to go bankrupt and have somebody come into his home and take his daughter's crib. That matters to him. That's what a mission-driven messenger is. And I think that's the part that AI can't replace. That's the part that we can only feel as humans. And I think that is the part that is going to matter more and more and more. And I'm not anti-AI. I love AI. I'm just saying I think this is the part. I think this is the future. It's not the vanity stuff. It's the humanity stuff.
It's so true. Well, and even, I remember when I was in Dave's headquarters after you introduced us, and what blew me away, and I think transcends if you want to build a big company that lasts forever, and also if you want a lot of people to care about you on the internet, and also if you want to have a huge impact, obsession is really hard to beat. And so, people might think we're being touchy-feely by saying we care about people, and if you care more, you'll get more. It's not enough to just care. You've got to obsess. And when I walked into Dave Ramsey's headquarters, and the first thing that you see is an example of the old car that he used to have that he sold books out of the back of. It's an entire huge wall and almost like museum exhibit of every single person who's now debt-free. It's that the public is allowed in every single day and given fresh cookies if they want to come and listen to Dave talk. Mm-hmm. And it's that he brings in his family, it's that and then he's so obsessed that he squeezed every bit of productivity out of me in that day that he possibly could have. I think I did 3 podcasts. I met with his team. We had lunch, because he's obsessed about his problem set. And so I think the other thing, if you want to be really successful on the internet and you want to grow online, it's the most competitive game you could play because anybody can do it. And so the way that you win is by being obsessed about the thing that you're really interested in. And if you're more obsessed in something small, even better. So I totally agreed with that.
Yeah, I think I love that. I mean, he is a great example. And that is, people I'm so nerdy about book launches and the art of speaking and the business of speaking and copywriting and it's but this is my uniqueness. And I'll share with you the best piece of branding advice I've ever received. I wish this was my quote. It's not. This came from a guy named Larry Winget. He said, the goal is to find your uniqueness and exploit it in the service of others. Yeah. To find your uniqueness and exploit it in the service of others. To figure out that thing that other people would think is so weird. They'd be like, Rory, why do you care so much about books? And it's I don't know. It's just who I am, right? It's the reason why Cody cares so much about laundromats and buying boring businesses. It's just who you are. But you go, you lean into that. You become more of that. Here's another great quote. This one's from Sally Hogshead. She's my friend. And she says, the world isn't changed by people who sort of care, right? Nobody change the world who sort of cared. You change the world by caring so much that it's like you'll endure tremendous pain and tremendous sacrifice. But I think that there is a certain amount of money for most people that it starts to lose its drive. There is a certain amount of followers at some point for most people that starts to like lose its drive. There's a certain amount, once you've spoken on stage in front of 10,000 people 100 times, it's not that you're not like excited to do it. It's not the same. But when you have a genuine passion for helping other people, it's this insatiable desire that's healthy.
Yeah.
And if you can obsess about it, the way that Dave's obsessed about getting people out of debt, the way that Lewis obsesses about helping people overcome self-doubt, the way that Dr. Lyon obsesses about people being healthy and getting accurate health information, the way that Ed obsesses over helping people realize that they're capable of doing more, then your world starts to change, and you start to change the world of the people around you. And anyways, I don't know. I'm a geek for this game.
Yeah, well, I also think it's the way that you never lose money and the way you don't lose everything is you make sure you really know who you're serving. I think a perfect example of like an anti-goal would be like the Hawk Tuah girl, right? Like, so she got super famous on the internet, on Twitter, for kind of like a goofy thing that she said that was kind of a little sexual about, and she was this cute little girl from Alabama, and she went viral everywhere, and she got a podcast deal, and then what did she do? She confused virality for actual direction. And she ended up going all in on this crypto coin, and her followers lost tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. That won't happen to you if you know who you're serving, because you'll remember what you're actually trying to accomplish. And I think a lot of people blow up spectacularly online and lose their focus, because once you do start getting a little bit of success, you'll get a lot of optionality, and you'll have to make really hard decisions that make people don't like you by saying no to things. And you have to, we just had this conversation actually not too long ago. There was a thing we were both going to kind of knew about a person that was doing something online. That's like the most nondescript thing ever. But there was a thing that came up, and, found out some information that just wasn't ethically aligned with me to stand on that person's stage. And so I ringed you and I was like, did you know about this? Let's talk about it. And it wasn't because I don't want to be next to that person. I don't know them. It was because I know my audience is trying to figure out how to get financially free, and they trust me, some of them, and they want to move to the next level. And if I put them in any situation which might not give them the best advice or the best trust from another human, that's breaking my mission. And so if you don't really stand up for something, you'll fall for anything. And those are the hard decisions I think you have to make as you build a business and get a personal brand. One other thing I wanted to actually talk about with you here is you have so many frameworks and tools and resources that you use. You talked about one, which is this revenue stream breakdown. Mm-hmm. Can you run us through that in like 30 seconds?
The revenue streams assessment?
Yeah. How do you figure out what revenue streams you should be doing and what you should not be doing using your revenue streams assessment?
Yeah, so simple. All you do is you list out all your revenue streams on the wall, and we just put them through a simple scoring process, and you go, okay, how many years have you been doing it? How much revenue is it? How stressful is it for you to keep up? And what's the DARES score? So DARES is an acronym that we use. It's 5 criteria that make a great revenue stream. We're looking for things that are digital, automated, recurring, evergreen, and scalable. Digital, automated, recurring, evergreen, and scalable. So basically, like, how scalable is this revenue stream? And then how life-giving is it to you? Yeah. And you basically just fill in those numbers and you kind of look at it. And a lot of times what will happen is things will jump off the page like, oh, we're doing this just because it makes a lot of money, but it's actually really hard. Nobody likes it. It's sucking the life out of our team. And other things, like in the case of Lewis, where the podcast wasn't making a ton of money, but the other one is which has the most natural momentum. That's one of the other big ones. And it was like, it had so much natural momentum, and it was so life-giving, and it was low stress, and it was like, all right, well, what would happen if we did that? So, we tend to not be fans of multiple streams of income early on.
Yeah. Okay.
I think most of the people who I know who are rich or filthy rich They didn't get rich from multiple streams of income. They got rich from doing one thing really, really well. They had one business that really blew up. They focused on concentration first, then they broke through the wall, and then did diversification second. So it's like, yes, many millionaires have many streams of income, but that's not usually how they created the first. Usually they create one stream of income. So most of our clients that we're working with are, they're personal brands, or they're small businesses, or they're executives of small companies. And so we're trying to go, if you don't have a huge staff, then you need to figure out what one revenue stream is most likely to succeed and go all in on that one thing. So the revenue streams assessment is just like helps us sort of spot the winner.
Yeah, it's true. I often think I'm tortured on that advice because I think you won't know what to go all in on until you try a few things.
Sure.
And so I think there's this like middle ground. It's almost like you have to actually do a bunch of revenue streams to start.
You're testing them out.
Yeah, you have a test period. And during that test period, you will actually, you'll think that one does really well, and then you'll realize, oh wait, it's actually missing core components. And you'll have to do that for a bit of time until you do another analysis where you say, oh man, of all of these things that we have, it's really one or two that matter. And then you double down on those.
Yeah.
And then you hit this, it's like, is it like I think it might be 3 steps. It's like first step, revenue stream test and proliferation. Second step is like revenue stream divesting. And third step is
meaning getting rid of streams.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
that's
then
what I
third
think is huge.
step is revenue stream diversification.
Yeah.
And you kind of like do a circle all the way back to you start diversifying, you end diversifying, and in the middle you win by picking winners.
By focusing, and optimizing one thing, right?
Yeah.
And even like investors, right? It's like they go, well, that's multiple streams. Well, it's like, well, if you're an investor, like you're just investing. Like that's the only thing you're doing. You're not often balancing a whole bunch of stuff until you break through the wall and you have a team. Once you have team, time, talent, like technology, capital, then you can do all sorts of things, right? But in the beginning, when you don't have a lot of resources, if I have 10 initiatives and I have 10 units of resource, then on average, each initiative gets 1 unit of resource.
Yep.
Once I become wealthy and then I can hire people to do stuff, now I can put more resources on more initiatives. But early on, it's like more people lose because of a lack of focus in that kind of like, I think in that scaling phase of going, I think a lot of small businesses, like they're quick to add 70 revenue streams instead of figuring out, let's keep the main thing. But I do agree with you. You got to test early on to even know what works, what feels good, what is your audience responding to.
Yeah.
So I like that.
But I like the
evolution.
DARES analogy. I would totally use that on top of a business analysis. We use RICE often.
Oh, tell me.
Which is, so typically it's reach, impact, cost, and what's the last one? Oh, that's bad. There's one that basically says like, I can't remember what the word is, but it's like how much time it takes for your team. And so it's a literal formula. But I changed mine from reach, which is like, I think could be touchy-feely, to revenue. So how much money do you make? Impact to the business, which might mean like how many people need to be on the assignment for it. Cost, how much is it going to cost you? And then how long will it take you? Mm-hmm. And so you actually lay out this revenue model that at the end gives you a number. And the number, then you can stack rank them and decide, okay, what's the next thing that we're going to do? And every time I come up with a new idea now, I try to make myself run it through a RICE model. Because otherwise you have too many brilliant ideas that turn out they're not so brilliant when you compare them through your opportunity cost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, opportunity cost is huge. It's like the biggest invisible cost that people don't pay enough attention to. It's just going like, well, I could do that, but what does that pull me away from? Like that being able to calculate the opportunity cost, I think is one of the.
It's hard.
It's hard, but it's one of the things that people like you do, and going back to what our conversation about trust, it's like never doing anything that compromises the trust of your audience, because that trust is the big opportunity cost. It's like, even if I could sell you something, right? It's like, sure, we could sell them some t-shirts. Is that the right thing though at this moment? And it's like, we can make a quick buck doing this or that or whatever. But it's going, don't ever compromise that trust of your audience.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about, so if I want to get paid for my expertise. What's the roadmap? Like, how do you go, okay, I right now am a chiropractor. I do want to become an expert that is known publicly. I want to break out of obscurity. Maybe I even run a service business and I want people to know who I am. What is the process that you take people through?
Yeah.
So we've gone through the first 2 steps, I think.
Yeah, finding your who, right? And then you got to figure out what problem do you solve. And then you figure out how do you solve it in one sentence. It's really tough. Is going, how do I solve that problem for that audience in one sentence? The next thing we do is we figure out what one revenue stream matters above all in my business. Then the next thing is we create, we take people through a process called captivating content. So we then extract out of their head what is their system that they use for solving that problem. And we want to create original thought leadership, truly innovative intellectual property. My TED Talk that went viral was called How to Multiply Time. There's thousands of books on productivity and tons of people who talk about time management. But the focus funnel, which was the thing that went viral, my talk, you have to get that from me. Why? Because it came out of my head. So we really work on that to go, you can't be someone, you're not going to be paid at the highest level if you're playing cover tunes.
So good.
Like it's not wrong to play cover tunes. Like that can be fun, but don't expect to be the person that sells out arenas if you're playing cover tunes. Yeah. You got to learn to write your own music, and expertise is the same way. So we teach you how to create quotable moments, how to create visuals. We call them frameworks, charts, tables, diagrams that are unique to your methodology, the way that you do it. And this is why, again, we come back to serving the person you once were, because the credibility is not that you get somebody else out there who waves a wand and says, oh, you're credible, or you have a designation. The credibility comes from you've walked the freaking path. Like you've overcome that obstacle and you go, this is how I did it. And as long as you're teaching people how you did something that you actually did, or how you helped other people to overcome that, we bottle that up. Then we put people through something called world-class presentation craft, which is preparing their content for the spoken word. So in our universe, the spoken word is the fastest path to cash. To take someone from an absolute stranger, I've never heard of you, to a lifelong fan can happen in 1 hour if you have a world-class 1 hour presentation, which can be a podcast interview, it can be a webinar, it can be on stage, it can be a breakout, a workshop. But if you do it right and you structure your content, someone can go like, how have I never heard of you before? To all of a sudden, I am binging every book you've written, every podcast episode. Then in phase 2, we do all the digital stuff. That's social, funnels, copywriting, etc., podcasting, ads. And then you get to phase 3, which is often a book. A book still to this day is the primary way that you break through the wall of the mainstream to become recognized as a true thought leader. So we do a lot with that. Also the business of speaking. And then we really focus on sales. Yeah. And how to have a sales conversation. And then phase 4 is scaling the infrastructure of the team you need to like pull all of this stuff off.
It's so good. I mean, you know what the funny part to me is one, books suck to sell. So I think
so hard to sell.
They're hard to sell. And yet I think a lot of people want to hit the New York Times. You and I both know what it took to hit that, even with a giant audience. It's a lot of work. And anybody who says that it's not a lot of work, by the way, is lying. Can we talk about that? I mean, I giggle so hard. It's like, oh, I don't care that much. And then I talk to you and you're like, well, I know what they're really doing. It's so good. But the interesting part about books is you don't have to sell a ton. And that was one thing that, you opened up my eyes for a lot of our portfolio companies and our CEOs who are the best painting company in the world, That One Painter, who run an incredible franchise company, Resi Brands, that we run. And I'm talking to him about a book because I'm like, man, you don't need to sell hundreds of thousands of copies, actually. You just need people to know that they have an opportunity to go deeply into your mind and decide that they want to trust you on your venture. And a book does that in a way very little else does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of our other mantras around books is we say, bestseller lists don't change lives, but books do.
Yeah.
books change lives. Books automate trust, just like content automates trust, but it's a deeper level. There's a more intimate experience when you're holding the book, or you're listening, you're right in somebody's ear, and they're hard to sell, and yet you pour years of your life into like get it captured in the book. And by the way, that's also how you speak, is like people have either seen you speak or they've read something you've written. Those are the two reasons why two ways you get booked to speak. So I think books continue to stand the test of time. Ironically, as it becomes easier to post social content and faster to just fling something up, it still takes muscle and hours and hours and hours to edit a book, to write the book, edit it, pour over it. And so when you're reading a book, you're getting this concentrated, this most concentrated bit of wisdom. And it demonstrates your credibility. You go, want to know who I am? Read this.
Yeah.
And some people will look at it and go, oh yeah, I'm not interested. Great. Other people will read it and you go, you cannot read this entire book and not want to do more, right? You cannot read Main Street Millionaire the whole way through and go, oh my gosh, like I want to work with these people.
Yeah.
So it's still super, super powerful, and I love books. I hope they're around forever.
Yeah, me too. I want to talk really quickly about some more of your frameworks and systems. You talked in the beginning about, creating graphics and named frameworks. I think this is super underrated. We call it productization of services.
Yeah.
So like when we buy a company, one of the first things that we do is we teach them about how do you turn even a service into something that is a product, because otherwise it's not repeatable. And so this weekend is our scaling workshop where we help people build companies. And one of the biggest things we take people through is like everything that you do that you think is a service is actually not, in fact, a service. It's a product. And if we can get you to think about how the fact that it would be really bad if every time I bought a coffee cup like this, it looked totally different and they didn't match and they weren't the same and they had different quality levels, that would mean that I had a bad company. And yet we allow that in service businesses and we don't name and frame them. You have a lot of systems and ideas for how you get people to think in frameworks. Mm-hmm. Can you talk through some of your favorite systems and frameworks you train people through?
To help them come up with frameworks?
Could be that, and also what you take them through to create this personal brand, because you're kind of the framework guy. Like you have one for everything, I feel like.
Well, yeah, so we do believe in that. So one of this is actually from my How to Multiply Time, the TED Talk. One of my favorite lines in that book is a concept that came to me while I was writing that says, automation is to your time what compounding interest is to your money. Automation is to your time what compounding interest is to your money. Inside of commoditizing a service-based business is the way you automate it. Yep. You make it replicatable, duplicatable, scalable, repeatable, right? So for experts, we have to be able to do that. It's if my expertise lives in my head, the only way you can get it is from me. If it lives in a book, it's scalable. It also, we have strategists at Brand Builders Group, right? So we have about 50 employees, and our strategists can teach and expand because they're teaching a body of knowledge. So the biggest trick to this is very simple, is you first have to clarify the idea. And we say it ugly first. Always just say it ugly first. Write, the first rule of writing is to write. Then you edit and get clear on what you're trying to say. Once you then say it clearly, then you go say it with a picture. So say it ugly first, then say it clearly, then say it with a picture. So once you're saying it clearly, you go, how could I show this visually? Yeah. And if you train your mind to think in that way, then all of a sudden it resonates with people and it becomes more transmittable, which is a part of virality, right? Is it's going, in order for it to transmit, someone has to be able to share that idea. So anything that makes that idea more shareable, either the way you package what you say or the visual representation of what you say, makes that idea more transmittable. And we're as concerned in going viral offline as we are in going viral online. And so if you can ask yourself that, the other question that we always ask is, how can I forward the thinking of what's been done? So there might be an existing visual or framework that's out there, and you go, okay, how can I add to this? That's what a thought leader does in the true positive sense of the word, is to forward the thinking that's been done. How can I add a layer of usefulness or utility on what else has been written in my space? And that's why it's like we can all talk about topics that other people have talked about, but don't play cover tunes, right? Advance the thinking. Do the work for the people. This is another framework, is we try to go, how can I do more of the thinking work for my customer? So if you use the revenue streams assessment, it's one thing that I'll say, hey, go think about your revenue streams and think about which ones are the ones you should focus on. But if I turn it into a tool and I do the thinking for them, I create a tool that forces them to think in the sequence in which I would think, or another successful client of mine would think, that's where great visuals and frameworks and tools come from.
It's so true. You know, it's wild because it's personal brand. All of this personal brand is exactly related to building a business. I mean, if you want to be a leader in a business and you don't want to hate your business and hate your life, you have to name and frame everything so that you can automate things and then eventually delegate and outsource it. Otherwise, you don't have a business, you have a job. And so it's actually kind of the same. You know, I think about it with some of our businesses. It's like, we have something called the rule of 3. So every time you do a task that has more than 3 steps and you do it more than 3 times, it needs to become an SOP, right? And so rule of 3. And so I don't have to say, hey, remember that you need to create an SOP on this XYZ thing. I just go rule of 3 and they go, yeah. And so then you get to say less words and your people get to be an extension of your brain, which is so smart. And it's funny because I never thought about it in that way. But if you could think about building your business the exact same way as building a brand, it would be so powerful. Like we have something called the Empire Builder Survey, which basically takes people who own a business through a series of about 13 questions to tell them what value their business has and what areas they could do to make their business more valuable. And the reason why is because we did all these consulting calls with people for like, okay, you want to come in, you might be a fit for us to help you by investing, you might be a fit for us to help you by coming to our workshops, but it was all this one-on-one consultation until finally I was like, no, we can, here are the questions. Here are the buckets of answers. If they answer this way, I want to talk to them about investing. If they answer this way, they need to build the business first. Let's put them to our build. And so it's really applicable not just for a personal brand, but across just about everything. And you also have like a survey or some tools and resources for them,
study.
Don't you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we invested about over $100,000 conducting a national research study called the Trends in Personal Branding National Research Study. So it's weighted to the U.S. Census, right? It's statistically valid. We followed all traditional academic rigor. It's PhD led to understand how much does this personal brand stuff matter to businesses. So it turns out 74% of Americans say they are more likely to trust you just because you have an established personal brand.
Tracks.
63% of Americans say they're more likely to buy from you because you have a personal brand. 58% of Americans say they're willing to spend more money on the products and services that come from founders where they know the personal brand and the values of the founder. I mean, this, and if you stratify the data by generations, like the age range of people who filled it out, all the trends show that in the next 10 to 30 years, it's going to matter even more. Even more. Now, it's ironic where our worlds collide is to build a business that has value, you want it to be independent of a person. Yep. That's the whole thing that gives a business value. But ironically, what attracts people to a business often is a personality that they can attach to, right? We don't do business with companies, we do business with people.
Right.
But the way that I think about it for small businesses is I think about it like a rocket is going, your personal brand should be the sort of side boosters that you use to get the business off the ground. But then once you get it launched out into space, then your personal brand falls off and the business can just sort of follow a trajectory and live on without you. But it takes a personal brand can help tremendously early on. So there's a bunch of data. If you go to freebrandstudy.com/Codie, freebrandstudy.com/Codie, we actually give the whole research study away.
That's cool. I want to say that
out. Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
I didn't start a personal brand to have business success. I think I just was curious about what's happening in the world, and I wanted to write a newsletter, and I like writing. And so that's sort of how it started. And I thought we weren't talking very much to each other, and this was in 2020. So I was like, here's a way that we can maybe start having some conversations. But now that I think about it, it's pretty pivotal to a lot of our portfolio companies. I don't think every human needs to have a personal brand, but I think there needs to be a brand that is associated with you, because in the age of AI and in the age of mass commoditization of content creation, you got to have something that feels human, to your point. And you got to have something that feels unique and high trust, because I think going forward, AI isn't going to make us have to do less work and for things to be easier. It's actually going to mean that everybody is able to be pretty good, and you're going to have to be great to stand out. And one of the ways that you do that is by being, weirdly, authentically you, and your brand can be that too. Like we have a portfolio company, Pinks, that's a window cleaning company, and they're two young guys who they're uniquely them. They're kind of hipsters, they're really faith-based, they're fun, they're energetic, and they attract all the rest of our franchise owners at Pinks are very similar to them. A lot of like ex-vets, they're like these like young, kind of clean-cut, wholesome, good-looking dudes. And they don't have a very big social following, but they have a pretty big social following for a cleaning company. And so if somebody wants to go start a window cleaning business and they want all the systems and processes, these guys have earned a lot of their trust. And so even for window cleaners, I think it's something relevant.
It absolutely is. So let's talk about trust on a data point really quick.
Ooh.
So one of the things that one of the questions we asked in this study is which piece of marketing collateral matters the most in influencing a purchasing decision.
Okay.
And we asked things like they have a large social media following, they have a large YouTube channel, they have a polished, like a podcast. We said they have a blog, they have a nice website, they have a book, a best-selling book, a New York Times best-selling book. And we had people rank them. And none of those things were the top on the list. 62% of Americans say the single most important piece of marketing collateral that will influence their purchasing decision, testimonials from other customers.
Yeah, that tracks.
It costs nothing. You can have it by this afternoon. It costs nothing. What do they want? They want human validation. Yeah. They want a human that they can trust to say, if a human said it, then I can believe it. Not just it's pretty, not just there's lots of people saying this, but like show me an individual people and what they have to say about you. And I thought that was super powerful. The other top ones are that they've been featured in media and that they've been paid for their expertise.
Interesting. It actually tracks, because I was just talking to one of the members of one of our companies, and they have testimonials on the website, but they made a fatal error. And the error is, it says this nice testimonial, no picture, no name. Mm-hmm. That could be, that's almost as bad as not having testimonials on your website. And now there's a lot of ways you got to make sure compliantly you share them, which is a whole other issue. But we have a segment that we do for our build group that is all about exactly that. We think about them as reviews, because a lot of these are service businesses, but there's a lot of data that shows people won't buy from you if you have less than 3.5 stars, which is crazy. And they will pay more money for you if you have more than 3.5 stars and more than 100 reviews. And so that's really interesting. Probably a great way to get more testimonials and reviews is basically being online and sharing other people's.
Yeah, it is. And there's online and there's online and offline too, right? I mean, if you look, I believe that the best form of marketing in the world is a changed life.
Yeah.
Right? You change someone's life, they'll tell people. You don't even have to ask them. You don't have to incentivize them. You don't have to send them a coupon. If you change someone's life, they'll tell people about you. Now, when you're cleaning, doing laundromat and you're washing windows, like, are we changing people's lives to that? Well, maybe there's ways that we can do that. But you got to have your customers, you should strive to be so good that your customer force becomes your sales force, right? It's one thing for me to go, hey, I know what I'm talking about. It's another when Codie Sanchez says, hey, Rory is someone that I've hired for time to time to help me. Like, that's freaking powerful, right?
Yeah.
Because you trust that there's that transfer of trust.
Yeah.
And it's human, and I think it's going to just continue to matter more. And I actually think video testimonials are going to matter a lot. I mean, you can already deep fake a video. So, even as that happens, you go, what matters the most? What matters the most is someone in real life coming up to you and saying, have you read that book?
Yep.
Have you been to that restaurant? Have you watched that movie? You need someone to clean your house? I have the person. You need someone to fix your car? Like, your HVAC broke? Like, I have the guy. Nothing will ever be more powerful than that. So, yes, online. Yes, social. Yes, AI. But don't forget, at the end of the day, this is about reputation. And reputation is about trust. And these concepts are as old as time. So the medium is changing, but the foundation is the same.
Rory, you're the man. Follow Rory on all. Where do you like people to follow you the most?
Well, so the one place I would say, go to freebrandcall.com/Cody. So if you're serious about building this and you really want to be an expert entrepreneur, build your brand, request a call with us, freebrandcall.com/Cody. If you're not so serious about it, but you want the data, just go to freebrandstudy.com/Cody. And then we'll get connected from there.
I love it. Rory, I really appreciate you. You really did help me a lot. I'm not just saying that. So I can't wait for the next book so I can put you again through more text as opposed to voice note misery. And I hope you guys listening out there take this to heart. I think there needs to be more good humans who are willing to share their expertise and actually do the thing that most won't, which is teach and not just take. And so thanks, Rory. You're the man.
Thanks for having me.